Chapter 794. In the lakeside house of Mount Chi School in Central Region, Xia Xiaohe looked at senior immortal Paksu with stern eyes, which made the latter feel helpless. Tell me honestly what's wrong with you? I'm not joking with you. This time I've indeed been possessed by an inner demon. What a joke. There are at least 80,000 inner demons that have been crippled by you. How can a person like you have inner demons? Xia Xiaohe laughed disdainfully, but soon realized that something was wrong. Are you serious? Paksu said, very serious. I have always been serious about my feelings. You know me. Xia Xiaohe remained silent and did not speak. She thought to herself that this childhood sweetheart was indeed serious about love, but his feelings were twisted. He would never like anyone. He would only like collectibles, or rather, he would only turn the things he liked into collectibles. The more he loved it, the more he had to go through countless processes to finally make it into a shocking collection. He remembered that a long time ago when he showed his collection room to a few immortal supremacies who had fought with him, some of those immortal supremacies vomited on the spot. Therefore it could be said that the people he liked were really unlucky. However, this had nothing to do with Xia Xiaohe. It didn't matter how perverted Paksu was. Anyway, he didn't dare to be perverted to her. As long as Shattering Void was still useful, it could be used. This was also the path of leadership that she had learned from the Immortal King. And to some extent, Shattering Void in the state of inner demons was more useful than usual. Because in normal times he was too difficult to use. Not to mention the little princess of the immortal world, even Xuanxian Wang Xiaoyu himself sometimes couldn't command him. When Paksu went crazy, he didn't even recognize his own family. He was sent into the endless immortal prison by the Immortal King as many as 3 times. If a normal immortal went in once, they wouldn't be able to come out in one piece, but he went in and out 3 times and was still alive and kicking. He did not learn his lesson at all. On the contrary, he who had been struck by the devil in his heart, was less crazy, more focused, and easier to communicate with. It was just that after so many years, Paksu rarely had a devil in his heart, because his collection was so rich that few people could arouse his interest. Who is the unlucky one this time? Paksu shook his head and said, I'm sorry, but I can't say. Oh, you're still keeping secrets from me? Are you afraid that I'll snatch it from you? Xia Xiaohe narrowed her eyes and smiled. Paksu nodded his head and said, I'm indeed a little worried. Little he, you have never been afraid of meat and vegetables. You're the princess of the immortal world, so you have endless resources. I don't have your unique conditions, so it's really not easy for me to get a good collection, so don't fight with me. Xia Xiaohe took a deep breath and resisted the urge to beat him up. She said coldly, I have a few things for you to do now. Can you do them? Paksu immediately nodded and said, Of course, I will not shirk away from the little princess's task. TSK, you're not even willing to share a collection with me and you're talking about risking your life? Xia Xiaohe scoffed at Paksu's pretentious behavior. Moreover, I don't need you to risk your life. Right now, our strength is not so abundant, so it can't be wasted. Paksu was a little puzzled. Not enough power? With me and Her Royal Highness, we should be able to sweep through this world. Sweep? Have you forgotten how Moonbreeze died? Have you forgotten what happened to Kanglin? Have you forgotten that there are still more than 100 Dixian remnants here? Paksu smiled and said, Clay chickens and pottery dogs, a motley crew. Xiaohe, you're the princess of the immortal world, so you should inherit the indomitable spirit of His Majesty. Do you not know how to talk if you don't argue with me? Have you forgotten my means after such a long time? Xia Xiaohe was angry and Paksu immediately shut up. Listen, although 9 regions is a lower realm, it is, after all, the origin of the immortal world. We are not qualified to underestimate this place. What's more, our enemy is not necessarily the people of 9 regions. An alien that comes out of nowhere is a big trouble. I don't want to confront him now, so we have to keep a low profile, do you understand? Of course, Paksu didn't understand, but it didn't prevent him from nodding. I know you want to say that the enemy is in the light while I'm in the dark, but I can tell you that 9 regions has long been operated like an iron bucket. If you keep a low profile, it will be really difficult for them to find you. For example, if you and I hide in Mount Chi, they will never find us. But once you make a move, the power of the whole continent will converge in an instant. Paksu thought for a moment and said, Then what should we do? First, break their iron bucket array and start from the inside. Xia Xiaohe said and then took out a piece of paper. On the paper was a woman who looked 14 or 15 years old. She was delicate and beautiful, but her face did not have the innocence and vitality that a young girl should have. Instead, she was a bit lazy and irritated. From her slightly frowning eyebrows, it was not difficult to see that her temper was obviously not very good. Paksu took a closer look and asked, "Who is this person?" "Feng Ling, the lady boss of Ru Family Inn in Spirit Creek Town." "Can you say something I can understand?" "Oh, you must not be unfamiliar with her other identity. She is the container of the nine-tailed fox." Paksu immediately understood and said, "The servant soldier that was put into the lower realm more than 100 years ago?" "Yes, the nine-tailed fox that was personally captured and put into the lower realm by Senior Immortal Xiaoyao to release the natural disaster. At that time, it was suppressed and sealed shortly after coming to the lower realm. I lurked in 9 regions for 15 years and finally found its container. Next, I want you to find a way to get in touch with this container and then use this to unlock the seal." Paksu took the demon-breaking needle that Xia Xiaohe handed him and was somewhat puzzled. He said, "So what if the seal is unlocked? A nine-tailed fox shouldn't be able to set off any storm." "Of course, the nine-tailed fox can't set off any storm, but the lady boss of Ru Family and can set off stormy waves. You don't need to know so much about the specific situation, just follow my plan." Paksu pondered for a moment and then took the portrait of Feng Ling. He said, "Okay, leave this matter to me. What about you?" Xia Xiaohe smiled and said, "I'm going to the Western continent." "Western continent? Isn't that the territory of the Temple of Gods? It's not a place we should touch. There's nothing we shouldn't do. Do you think that the Temple of Gods is still shining in the galaxy and can be on an equal footing with the immortal world? That group of rotten people should have died long ago. This time, 9 regions will be flattened, and the next one will be the Western continent. If the Temple of Gods is not sensible, then let them disappear together." Paksu raised his eyebrows. Listening to Xia Xiaohe's words, it seemed that the fallout with the Western gods was a recent thing, which was faster than he expected. Although he had long known that there would be a war between the immortal world and the Temple of Gods, it should be thousands of years later when the value of 9 regions was completely exhausted. It seemed that His Majesty the Immortal King intended to speed up the progress. He had always been slow to keep up with the strategic changes in the immortal world. Although his status was enough to get the first-hand news, he was not interested. But the focus now is on 9 regions. "What are you going to do in the Western continent?" Xia Xiaohe said with her usual sunny and warm smile, "The world is so big, I want to see it." Previously, we were in a deadlock with the Temple of Gods, so we never had a chance to go to the Western continent. Now that the opportunity is rare, we should go there. I heard that there is a country called Bretonia which is very beautiful and worth seeing. "That's right." Xia Xiaohe patted her forehead and said, "I almost forgot one more thing. Bai Zai Shenemo, you two come here." A moment later, the 2 Dixian appeared expressionlessly in the lakeside house. "Recently, I'm going to the Western continent to do a big thing. Before I leave, I'll give you an important task. I know that the Wanxian League has a workshop in the Red Sea which has been producing war machines called Zaku. You two find a way to destroy the workshop." Bai Zai opened his eyes incredulously and said, "You want the 2 of us to destroy the heavily guarded Red Sea workshop? You don't think your power is enough? Then go and find a new partner. You two should be quite popular among the earthly immortals, right?" "Impossible, the Dixian have long been controlled by Wang Lu. It's impossible to betray." Xia Xiaohe sneered and said, "Impossible to betray? Then what's the matter with the 2 of you? Tell my words to your old friends carefully, I believe there will be people who will be tactful." After that, without waiting for the 2 to argue, Xia Xiaohe's words blocked their retreat. "You two, if you want to get on my boat, you have to pay 2 tickets, right?" After explaining the task, Xia Xiaohe left Mount Qi and took away all the books and belongings in the lakeside house. It seemed that she would never come back. This made Bai Zai and Xian Mo very surprised. Previously, when they sneaked into the Mount Qi school, Xia Xiaohe spent a lot of effort. Not only did she secretly assassinate the original sect leader, but she also brainwashed everyone in the school, so that they would not be surprised by Xia Xiaohe, the new sect leader. Later, she personally transformed the lakeside house to make it more in line with her aesthetic taste. They thought that she worked so hard to make this place a long-term stronghold, but now she left cleanly without any reluctance. For Paksu, all of this was not surprising. Xia Xiaohe had always been unpredictable. What she did with great fanfare was not necessarily what she really wanted to do, but a casual move could become the key to victory. In addition, she was moody and her position was also unpredictable. Even Xia Yu, the Immortal King, had a headache for this child. Instead of wasting time trying to figure out her mind, it was better to follow the plan honestly. With such a thought in mind, Senior Immortal Paksu quietly came to the foot of Spirit Sword Mountain in Blue River region. At this time he was still dressed as a scholar. He was an immortal with the great immortal technique, Su. The effect of his illusion was perfect. Even at the foot of Spirit Sword Mountain, no one could see through his real body. Following the map index, Senior Immortal Paksu soon came to the famous Ru family inn. Well, the next thing is to find a way to see the owner of this place. In order to avoid alerting the enemy, he did not use the magical ability of the immortal to lock the position of the other party in advance. However, on the way here, he had already inquired about the lady boss Feng Ling, who had settled here for a long time and would not travel far easily. Just as he thought of this, he suddenly saw two burly men flying out of the Ru family inn and rolling all the way along the slope of Spirit Creek town. A girl, who looked 14 or 15 years old, looked at the two men who vomited blood and fainted with disgust and said, "Reckless thing, how dare you be picky about the taste of the food here?" The people around them had long been accustomed to this scene. Senior Immortal Paksu, on the other hand, was pleasantly surprised. "Hi, it really didn't take any effort at all. Hello everyone, it's me again. It's still about the vote canvassing for the 10-cent animation PV competition. There is only one day left in the competition. Please still support Spirit Sword Mountain. QQ. Comside cast a valuable recommendation vote for Spirit Sword Mountain. One QQ account can cast 3 votes a day. Thank you everyone." Chapter 795. Senior Immortal Paksu was very glad that he was in the state of Inner Demon. Otherwise the trouble would be really big. In the state of Inner Demon, although his fighting ability would be reduced a lot, his mind would be much clearer, so he would not do stupid things. What stupid things? For example, when he saw the target he would rush to do whatever he wanted, which was a big stupid thing. Xia Xiaohe assigned him a task to find a girl named Feng Ling, and then use the demon-breaking needle to unlock her seal and release the nine-tailed fox. Now Feng Ling had been found not far from him. She was exactly the same as the person in the portrait, especially the valiant and formidable-looking spirit between her eyebrows, which was absolutely not fake. But the next question was the key. How could he use the demon-breaking needle to unlock her seal? The worst choice was to go hard. Although with the strength of Senior Immortal Paksu, he could set off a natural disaster in any place in 9 regions and kill thousands of people. However, this was the foot of Spirit Sword Mountain, one of the 5 extremes of 9 regions. More importantly, according to Xia Xiaohe, his treasured collection was the people from Lingjian School, and the alien that made Xia Xiaohe feel very difficult was also a person from Lingjian School. Thus, in Paksu's view, Spirit Sword Mountain was undoubtedly the most dangerous place in 9 regions. Once he made his move, there would be no good ending. So what should he do? Paksu thought about it and decided to take it one step at a time. He had already seen the person, so the rest was to slowly grind it down. Xia Xiaohe didn't set a time limit for the task, so why should he be in such a hurry? Moreover, he was now clear-headed, so he was not afraid of any changes if he delayed for a long time. Thus, he confidently strode into the inn and shouted with a smile, "Give me one of my signature dishes." Feng Ling, who was inspecting in the lobby, glanced at him and then ignored him. She was no longer the lonely person who ordered, cooked, and paid for everything. As the boss, she didn't need to do anything herself. Even beating up bad customers who deliberately found fault with the taste of the food was out of interest. Otherwise, the Ru family and had plenty of hired thugs. Why would she need to personally show off her strength in the lobby? And the scholar who shouted in the lobby didn't seem to be anything special. He was just an ordinary tourist. Spirit Sword Mountain could welcome thousands of such tourists in a day. However, on the other hand, Feng Ling's heart palpitated faintly. It was a throb of fear. Windling trusted her instincts, but she also trusted her judgment. This contradiction made her frown, but she didn't think too much about it. This was the foot of Spirit Sword Mountain. What was there to worry about? Wind Chime spent the next 5 days in this conflicted state of mind. These 5 days passed by uneventfully. The inn was as busy as ever and the guest rooms were as full as ever. Under this situation where the supply could not meet the demand, the Ru family inn's room prices were notoriously high. Thus, the lady boss naturally noticed a certain scholar who stayed in the upper room for 5 days. And the scholar gradually felt that his patience was about to run out. He had stayed here for 5 days, and it could be said that he had been with Winchim day and night. However, even after 5 days he could not find any flaws in Winchim and could not find a chance to attack. Because this lady boss was so homebody that it made people's hair stand on end. She stayed in the inn every day and never took a step out. The purchasing of the resources in the inn was all handed over to her subordinates. She didn't go out to check at all. During this period the lady boss did meet some friends, but they always came to look for her. She never went out. This situation made it impossible to make a move. As long as Winchim didn't leave Spirit Sword Mountain, then once Paksa made his move, it would inevitably cause a great backlash. In fact, he was not afraid of backlash, but he was more afraid of the furious Xia Xiaohe. After thinking about it, Paksa decided not to wait and took the initiative to attack. The method of attack was also very simple. Since Winchim refused to leave Spirit Sword Mountain, then he would find a way to make her leave. Senior Immortal Paksa had the Void Immortal technique, so it was easy for him to deceive someone to go somewhere. Half a day later, Winchim saw an unexpected visitor in her room. When she saw that person, the lady boss, who had always been cool and straightforward, showed an indescribable complex look. "What do you want from me? I don't want to see you." As she spoke, she involuntarily took half a step forward. In the eastern border region 500 miles south of the Red Sea, there was a small town. In a tea shop in the town, Bai Zhe and Xian Mo were facing a pot of coarse tea with heavy expressions. "Are we really going to do it?" Bai Zhe held the small teacup in his hand and asked softly. Xian Mo was silent and could not give an answer. Xia Xiaohe's argument is indeed reasonable. The power of the immortal world is too strong, which is not something that the 9 regions can match. Instead of fighting to the death, it's better to give our own people a little living space. Bai Zhe said softly, "But such a simple truth, if we understand it, don't other people understand it?" "What?" Xian Mo interrupted somewhat irritably. "Well, what's the use of saying that now? I don't care what you like to deny, but do you and I have a way back?" "No." Bai Zhe smiled gently. Xian Mo was suddenly stunned and said, "Bai Zhe, do you want to?" Bai Zhe said, "Think about it carefully. If we want to go back, it's now. First of all, Xia Xiaohe is far away in the western continent and we are free. Although we have surrendered to Xia Xiaohe, we have not really done anything to hurt the 9 regions. On the contrary, by following her, we have learned a lot of important information such as Senior Immortal Paksu, Immortal King Xiaoyu, and that they are about to make a move against Feng Ling and Aya, which is obviously aimed at Wang Lu. The value of this information is enough to make up for the detours we have taken before. Moreover, from another perspective, if our surrender is just a disguise, a false appearance to deceive information, then we won't even have a stain on us." Bai Zhe said it lightly, even with some confidence, but Xian Mo's hand was slightly trembling. "Bai Zhe, you should know that Xia Xiaohe must have heard those words just now. So what? Can she come back in time? And do you think that even if we don't say anything and behave meekly and obediently, she will trust us?" Bai Zhe shook his head with a chuckle and said, "To judge whether a person is trustworthy or not, it depends on what he does, not what he says. If we really instigate other companions to rebel and destroy the Red Sea underwater workshop, then there will be no place for us in 9 regions, and it would be impossible for us not to surrender. At that time, even if we have more ideas and arguments, she won't mind. And now, before it's done, no matter what we say, she won't trust us. So, if you want to say it, just say it. Why care so much? The key is, what are you going to do?" Hearing Bai Zhe's words, Xian Mo's heart calmed down a little, and the balance of the 2 sides began to tilt towards one side. However, then Bai Zhe said something else, which made Xian Mo's heart restless again. "I want to stay." "What did you say?" Bai Zhe repeated indifferently, "I want to stay on Xia Xiaohe's side." Xian Mo shook his head in disbelief and said, "What?" "You can understand it as, a good bird chooses a tree to nest in. After all, Xia Xiaohe is the stronger side." "I don't believe it." This was not the Bai Zhe she knew. Although the Bai Zhe in her impression was stupid and would do wrong things, he would never break his back. Xia Xiaohe and the fallen immortals were indeed powerful, but under the leadership of Sun Buping 16,000 years ago, they had a fierce fight with the upper realm with the awareness of certain death, and even experienced a resurrection. They were really not afraid of dying again. Previously, they submitted to Xia Xiaohe because her attitude towards 9 regions was still friendly, and they hoped that they could open a door for her. However, in the past 5 years they had gradually given up the plan to change Xia Xiaohe. That woman would not be shaken by anyone, and her friendliness towards 9 regions had gradually been stripped away, revealing a colder nature. Both Bai Zhe and Xian Mo were disappointed with her. Therefore, when Bai Zhe proposed to go back, Xian Mo didn't think much of it. What was surprising was that even though he proposed to go back, he still wanted to go down the dark road. "What? Because I can see that you don't want to stage." Bai Zhe said, "Of the 2 of us, one is enough to go back. You know what I know, so it doesn't make sense for one more person to go back. Moreover, as I said earlier, Xia Xiaohe is the stronger side. The power of the immortal world is too strong. No matter how hard we try, we can't rule out the possibility of total annihilation. At that time we need someone to continue the fire for us. Even if it's to be condemned by thousands of people and go down in history. Don't look at me like that. Didn't I play the same role when I followed the boss? I know you're all scolding me, but this is my job. Seeing Bai Zhe like this, Xian Mo suddenly felt his eyes turn sour. That's right. At that time Bai Zhe did play the role of being condemned by thousands of people, and he did have no regrets. Xian Mo really regretted it. He regretted that he couldn't see the other side of Bai Zhe. Why did he always hate him for no reason? Why did he play pranks on him when people weren't paying attention? Why did he secretly feel proud when he was angry? Bai Zhe smiled and said, well, don't look like you're going to die. I believe that we will meet again one day, and I hope to see your smiling face at that time. With that, his smile suddenly disappeared. Well, while Xia Xiaohe is in the western continent, let's hurry up. I will go to the Red Sea and make a scene. And you don't forget your mission. With that, Bai Zhe turned into a rainbow light and flew toward the Red Sea in the north. Xian Mo watched him leave and was silent for a long time. She picked up the teacup, rinsed her mouth with the bitter and cold coarse tea, and then stood up. The moment she stood up, she suddenly felt the coldness penetrating her bones. At the door of the tea shop, Xia Xiaohe was looking at her with interest. Why don't you go? Don't you know the way? Where do you want to go? I'll take you there. During the PV competition, I really appreciate everyone's active voting. The update will come soon. Chapter 796. In the tea house, Xia Xiaohe sits opposite to Xian Mo, picks up the teapot and drinks up the herbal tea, and then wipes her mouth with her sleeve. Xian Mo sits down weakly. Why are you here? If I'm not here, how can I watch the good show just now? Xia Xiaohe smiles. It's really wonderful. I've been with him for 5 years, but I didn't know he was so eloquent. You're right. If you want to go back, it's now. Xian Mo, do you want to go back? You haven't been back for a few years. Do you need me to show you the way? Xian Mo closed her eyes and forced herself not to let the tears flow out. She is not afraid of her fate, but she feels pity. It's a pity that Bai Zhe's good calculations all failed. It's a pity that he would rather sacrifice himself than achieve his goal. It's a pity that she didn't say anything to him when he left. But now there's no chance. All hopes turned to dust. Xian Mo felt as if she had once again experienced the despair she felt after losing the great battle 16,000 years ago. Kill me? Why? Xia Xiaohe asks. What's in it for me to kill you? If I really want to kill you, I'll do it just now. You and Bai Zhe can't escape. I don't kill you because I think what Bai Zhe said just now is very right. The functions of you two are highly overlapping. No matter what you do, it's enough to keep one of you alive. Bai Zhe chooses to stay so you can go. Xian Mo is a little surprised. You want to let me go? Yes. Xia Xiaohe nods with a smile. I've told you that I'm a kind-hearted immortal. You should believe me. Of course, Xian Mo doesn't believe in the so-called kind-hearted immortal. When facing Xia Xiaohe, she will first try to figure out her behavior with the greatest malice. Xia Xiaohe lets her go because she wants to play a game of cat and mouse? Give her hope and then make her desperate? Stop her on the way to Lingjin school? No, with Xia Xiaohe's temperament, she wouldn't do something so senseless. What she wanted to do would definitely... Still doubting me? Sai, you're really bored. What do I want to do? You won't be able to guess it even if you have 10,000 years. Why do you have to waste your time guessing? Do what you have to do. I won't play with you anymore. If we don't leave now, I'm afraid that little Bai Zhe will be beaten to death. Xian Mo was shocked. What did you say? However, Xia Xiaohe had already disappeared without a trace. Xian Mo hesitated for a long time in the tea shop before deciding to leave. As a Dixian, she flew extremely fast. Not long after, she left the eastern border province and entered the territory of the central province. She wanted to find Supreme Hichu, the sect leader of Shengjing sect, and then tell him everything she knew. As Xia Xiaohe said, she couldn't figure out the other party's mind. The information between the two sides was completely asymmetrical, so she just had to do what she had to do. In fact, Xian Mo wanted to go to the Blue River region to find Wang Lu, but she thought that Senior Immortal Paksu should also be in the Blue River region at this time, so it was better not to walk into the trap. Shengjing sect had the 9 regions map, which was the center of 9 regions. Finding Supreme Hichu was tantamount to finding everyone, whether it was the several Supremes of the Wanxian League or the former Dixian partners. After that, she could tell them all the information that she had collected in the past 5 years, and then, thinking of this, Xian Mo suddenly stopped, because she found a serious loophole in her plan. Even if she found Supreme Hichu, would the other party believe what she said? She disappeared with Xia Xiaohe 5 years ago, and then was listed on the wanted list of the Wanxian League. In other words, she was now a traitor of 9 regions. What reason did people have to believe her information? Moreover, was her information really reliable? Previously, she thought that Xia Xiaohe was in the Western continent, but she clearly never left 9 regions. As for the other information that she had come into contact with in the past 5 years, it was very likely that Xia Xiaohe was deliberately setting up a maze. With her scheming means, this was very likely. If she believed her information and was later caught in one fell swoop, Xian Mo would not be able to redeem herself even if she died 10,000 times. Thinking of this, Xian Mo once again fell into indecision. Where was the way ahead? There were countless forks in front of her, each of which led to endless darkness. And she really lacked the decisiveness to stride forward regardless of anything. In such confusion, Xian Mo wandered around the edge of the central region for 5 days like a walking corpse. Until by chance she heard such a dialogue in a small town where immortal cultivators gathered. "Hey, have you heard that the traitor who attacked the Red Sea underwater workshop a few days ago is about to be beheaded in public? Fiesque, his dog eyes are really blind. He ran alone to the most important place in the Wanxian League. Does he think he is the king of the immortal world? It is said that he is a good-for-nothing traitor of Dixian. Humph, I have already said that the so-called Dixian are unreliable. Who knows how many lackeys of the fallen immortals are among the losers more than 10,000 years ago? Before there was Black and now there is Baizé. I think that Tetragon is not a good thing." Hearing this, Xian Mo was shocked. Baizé was caught by the people of the Wanxian League and was about to be beheaded in public? Baizé, what the hell are you doing? Aren't you going to stay in Xia Xiaohe's camp to preserve the fire for us? How could you die so easily? Attacking the Red Sea underwater workshop single-handedly, are you going to die? Thinking of this, Xia Xiaohe's smiling face suddenly appeared in Xian Mo's mind. Yes, it was that woman. It was because of her that Baizé could not act according to the original plan. If he rashly attacked the Red Sea underwater workshop, perhaps he was really looking for his own death. Because if he fell into Xia Xiaohe's hands, his fate would only be worse. Xia Xiaohe would let Xian Mo go, but she probably would not let Baizé go. Xian Mo quickly figured out the crux of the matter, but her mood became even heavier. Baizé, the man who foolishly dedicated all his life, was going to die like this? With endless regret and humiliation, he died in the hands of his own people? Brother Li, this time, the Wanxian League arranged to execute the traitor on the Behead Immortal platform. Are you going to go and see it? Of course, I want to see the traitor's soul fly away and disappear with my own eyes. Hey, I think so too. In any case, I have nothing to do, so it's also fun to see the death of the great Dixian. In the grand competition there was a match where Dixian died, and I happened to not be able to see it live. This time I can't miss it, ha. The dialogue not far away made Xian Mo clench her teeth. Otherwise, she was afraid that she would not be able to control herself. You lowly bastards, what qualifications do you have to humiliate Baizé? What qualifications do you have to blaspheme his nobility? You lowly bastards who look at the sky from the bottom of a well, you are not even qualified to look up at Baizé's back. And Baizé, do you really want to sacrifice yourself for these bastards? Xia Xiaohe said that there were only a few people in 9 regions who deserved to survive. Now that she thought about it, she was right. Therefore, Baizé, I can't watch you die like this. Although I'm sorry, I can't follow the original plan. After thinking about this, Xian Mo stood up and stepped forward. This time, she had identified her direction. At the same time, in a deep cave in the distant cloud region, the girl finally ended her long coma and opened her eyes. This is... After a moment of dizziness and confusion, she realized that this was not a place she was familiar with. Thus, the chaos in her mind was driven away by her vigilance. She jumped up like a beast, leaned her back against the rock and put on a ferocious posture. At this time, a man's voice sounded in the dark cave. Don't be so nervous, sit down and talk slowly. The girl asked coldly, Who are you? Senior Immortal Paksu. Hearing this name, the girl could not help but take a breath of cold air. Of course she knew who Paksu was. At the foot of Spirit Sword Mountain, she ran one of the best inns in the industry, so her intelligence network was very wide. The news that Senior Immortal Paksu broke through the non-phase sword defense and entered 9 regions was only circulated in the Heavenly Sage Hall, but she already knew it very well. Therefore she quickly guessed why she was here. Thinking of this, Feng Ling could not help but hate herself for being careless. Didn't she decide to never see him again? Why didn't she harden her heart to expel him immediately when he appeared in front of her? If her reaction was a bit faster and more decisive at that time, even if the other party was Senior Immortal Paksu, it would be difficult for him to trick her out of the Rue family inn and drag her all the way here. She only had herself to blame, she really had herself to blame. What do you want? In the darkness, Senior Immortal Paxa said, don't be afraid, I don't want to do anything bad to you. It's really ridiculous for a rat who hides his head but shows his tail to say such a thing. You're right. As soon as his voice fell, the fire in the cave lit up and reflected the face of Senior Immortal Paxu. To Feng Ling's surprise, it was not a sinister, cunning, ferocious and terrifying face. Senior Immortal Paxu looked gentle, like a scholar in the academy. Is it strange? I have a demon in my heart now, and the symptoms are getting worse and worse, so I don't look the same as usual. You don't have to mind. Feng Ling frowned and said, what do you want? Paxa said, I'm just following orders. Someone wants me to poke you with this thing and unlock the seal in your body. Humph. Feng Ling snorted coldly, and the next moment she rushed from the edge of the cave. Her speed was extremely fast, completely beyond the scope of martial arts in the mortal world. At close range, even if the other party was a cultivator, he might be caught off guard. Her pair of steel-like fists could smash all immortal barriers. Now her breaking attribute was not only effective in Blue River region, but even in the distant Southern Heaven region she could break all kinds of laws with one punch. The premise was that this punch could hit the target. Senior Immortal Paxu simply took a step back, which made Feng Ling's punch return in vain. Then, when she was about to rush forward and turn around, he suddenly approached her. He raised his hand and grabbed Feng Ling's arm, forcing her to bend down and unable to move. As an immortal, Paxu's martial arts cultivation was superior to Feng Ling's. Alas, don't be so impatient. I think we should have a good talk. Feng Ling struggled hard, but found that her joints were locked and she could not break free at all. Bah! If you want to kill me or cut me, there's nothing to talk about. I'm really thinking about you. Breaking the seal is a good thing for you. You don't need to care. Senior Immortal Paxa smiled and said, I know you're a kind person. As the seal container of the nine-tailed fox, although you have suffered all kinds of misfortune in your life, you feel that this is, after all, a sacrifice for all living beings in 9 regions and you are willing to do it. Yes, I'm so noble. If you have the ability, just kill me. But have you ever thought about it, you? Are you really just a simple container? First, I'll return one more chapter. I'll rush it as soon as possible. Chapter 797. In the cave, the words of Senior Immortal Paxu made Feng Ling quiet down in an instant. Because this question was really her weakness. Had she ever thought that she was not a simple container? Of course she had thought about it, but she never thought about it deeply. Because the answer that vaguely appeared in her intuition from time to time was chilling. Feng Ling was a girl with keen intuition. She trusted her intuition but never blindly used it. She knew what she should know and what she shouldn't know. It was rare for her to be confused. For example, for so many years the old man on the mountain always played the role of a father with poor acting skills, and then clumsily and rudely gave her the title of illegitimate daughter, trying to render a slightly funny father-daughter relationship. But she had long known that she was not Feng Yin's daughter, and it was not a secret that the old man practiced virgin power, so how could he have a daughter? Of course, many people also knew that the illegitimate daughter was just a disguise, an excuse. Feng Yin's generosity and tolerance to her was because more than 100 years ago, when the nine-tailed fox ravaged the Lingjian school, Feng Yin sacrificed an innocent girl and sealed the nine-tailed fox in her body. Then, in order to make up for it, he regarded her as his own daughter. However, Feng Ling vaguely felt that this explanation was also just a disguise. Feng Yin worked hard to play the role of a father and was treated coldly by her for decades in order to hide a more important truth. She didn't want to know the truth because her current life was good enough for her. Although many people thought it was boring to live in Spirit Creek Town, she really liked it. He liked this mountain, liked this town, and liked this Rue Jian, no matter when it was empty or when it was full of guests. Similarly, she liked the white-bearded old man's flattering closeness. She liked that when the two of them got along she frowned at him, curled her lips at him, spoke ill of him, and then involuntarily smiled when she turned around. Of course there was also the guy named Wang Lu. Since she met him, things had always been wonderful. She liked this kind of life very much, so even if she deceived herself, she hoped that life could continue along the current trajectory. But, no matter how beautiful the dream was, it would come to an end. You are not a container, you are the nine-tailed fox. What Feng Yin sealed was not the nine-tailed celestial fox's powers, but the nine-tailed celestial fox's memories. He turned you into an ordinary person and led you to live a mediocre life in the inn. You even forgot the enmity of being suppressed and sealed, acknowledging the thief as your father. Sigh, just thinking about it makes my heart ache. Feng Ling said angrily, I'm willing to recognize him, what does that have to do with you? Whether he's a thief or a robber, even if he's a dog, he's still my father. It's none of your business. Paksu smiled and said, of course this is the case for you now. Feng Yin has induced you for decades, so this result is not surprising. But, are you willing to hear the answer from the bottom of your heart? I'm not interested in what others have to say. Paksu said, the lifespan of the nine-tailed celestial fox is very long. Although you are not fully mature, you have actually spent nearly 1,000 years. Your life as Winchim is only a very, very small part of it, so your stubbornness right now is really laughable to me. Laugh if you want, but I will never give in to you. Is that so? Then give it a try. After Paksu finished speaking, the demon-breaking needle pierced into the back of Winchim's neck. The next moment, a frightening demonic wind whistled. The gravel in the cave flew and the wind whistled sharply. In the middle of the gale, Winchim's body trembled violently involuntarily and uttered a long and painful whine. Paksu loosened his hand and took a few steps back with the wind. He watched Winchim curled up on the ground, unable to move because of the severe pain. After a long time, the demonic wind stopped, and Winchim's trembling finally stopped. Her whole body seemed to have been immersed in water. Raising her head, the girl's clear eyes had changed color, and a touch of seductive red soaked her pupils. When she saw Paksu, the girl smiled slightly and said, Thank you, Senior Immortal, for finally finding my precious thing. After dreaming for decades, I finally woke up. Senior Immortal, Paksu said, now that you're awake, do you know what you should do? Of course, I must repay the decades of life that the Lingjin school has given me. Well, you're the nine-tailed fox, so you should use your brain and magical abilities more. You don't have to rush in recklessly. The fox said with a smile, of course I was reckless and almost ruined the big thing before, but now I won't repeat the same mistake. In fact, the experience of these decades is not necessarily a bad thing. If I didn't get along with them for decades, it would be quite difficult for me to get close to them. Well, play the role of Winchim well. You can do a lot of things before you're exposed. Don't let us down this time. Understood. So, if Senior Immortal has no other instructions, I'll go first. Paksu nodded and said, You're more sober than expected. Just waking up from a big dream. Very well, you can go. When the fox was about to leave, Paksu suddenly asked a question. How much do you think a boiled radish can be sold for? The fox was startled and said, Boiled radish? A few coins should be enough. Go ahead. At the same time, over a secluded swamp in Blue River region, a bloody battle was taking place. The people in the passage wanted to go out, but the people outside the passage risked their lives to stop them. For 5 days and 5 nights, the people in the passage advanced wave after wave, but not even a mosquito could be let out. Bastards, get out of here. No one knew how many times it was, but the gatekeeper swept his sword, and a moon-like sword wave blasted into the passage, setting off stormy waves. No one knew how many great demons were swept away by the sword wave and wailed miserably. However, after the sword wave, the injured demons retreated, and a new batch of demons took their place. The army of servants in the passage seemed to be as tough as a reef under a big wave. After a moment of silence, a new wave of impact began. It's really endless. The gatekeeper glanced coldly at the inside of the passage. His eyes became sharper, but his hand holding the sword began to tremble. For 5 days and 5 nights, he single-handedly prevented the fallen immortals from descending to the lower realm. Such a feat could not be described with the word miracle. It could even be called a miracle. Of course, a miracle was not without a price. The undefeatable non-phase sword defense could not be eternal. However, it could be infinitely close to eternity because she was not alone. The 9 regions would not let her face this continent-wide crisis alone. At this time, the union of 10,000 immortals and the ancient Earth immortals were working in a tense and orderly manner. This 15-year-old machine was running with amazing efficiency. Wang Wu was the tip of the sword, the sharpest and unstoppable sword tip, and the entire 9 regions was the thick and heavy sword body. When Wang Wu fought, it provided her with the necessary support. With Supreme Hichu's 9 regions map as the core, more than 100 of the most elite and powerful cultivators of 9 regions were connected together. They were scattered all over 9 regions, occupying different blessed lands, and then absorbed the surrounding spiritual energy with their own cultivation base, which was then gathered through an array and delivered to the front line of the war. Such a massive supply of spiritual energy was enough to make a cultivator omnipotent. Although Wang Wu was alone with a sword, it was no less than a magnificent army. Although her hand trembled, the sword chi she wielded was still powerful. After a round of sword wave, the servant soldiers of the fallen immortals were still in a state of chaos. And her non-phase sword defense was still unbreakable. Whenever she felt that her strength was a little exhausted, there would be a warm current injected into her body to repair her fatigue. This unique battle array was the final product that was modified and perfected by countless people after being proposed by Wang Lu. In the face of the immortals, the number of people could not create an advantage. The Dixian had fully proved this point in the past. Under the crushing of the stage, it was easy to defeat the fallen immortals one by one, and more people would be a drag instead. Therefore Wang Lu simply did the opposite and chose one person to fight the fallen immortals alone. The rest of them only needed to support and did not need to participate in the battle. If they didn't participate in the battle, there would be no flaws. And Wang Wu's non-phase method had always been flawless. Get lost. Once again Wang Wu fiercely shook the non-phase sword defense, which shook the bones and blood of the servant soldiers. However, after this round of shock she involuntarily shook her body. Even though there was a warm current injected into her body, she could not immediately find her balance. In the passage, surrounded by a group of demons, the woman who was as light as a feather smiled and pointed at the direction where Wang Wu fell. Thus, several faintly discernible shadows pounced on her. This time, they still failed to break through Wang Wu's defensive circle and were blocked by the shock force of the non-phase sword defense. However, before their momentum dissipated, these shadows approached less than 10 feet in front of Wang Wu. The shadow attack failed, but the woman's smile remained unchanged. She waved her hand and began to reorganize the servant army, as if what happened just now was just a trivial matter. This made Wang Wu even more unhappy. Tisk, do you think that I don't have enough endurance and that my defeat is only a matter of time? Don't worry, little sister, it was just foreplay just now. Next, I promise to make you climax. With that, Wang Wu took the initiative to step forward and stepped into the passage. The woman was slightly surprised by this step. Then she nodded with a smile and the gem on her forehead shone. I am Yen Luo and I'm very happy to fight with you. At the same time, in Xingjing sect in the central region, Supreme Hichu's body swayed, and a large amount of immortal spirit dispersed. Wang Wu's step seemed to be understated, but it affected the whole 9 regions map, and the entire 9 regions map received a great impact. Thus, at the same time, countless people in 9 regions secretly scolded her for looking for trouble. It was not enough to guard the door outside the passage, but she also took the initiative to provoke. Did she want to die faster? Unfortunately, the person in the front line of Blue River region was Wang Wu, and it was Wang Wu who made all the decisions. Other people could do nothing but silently provide the surrounding spiritual energy. Fifth junior sister is not an impulsive and reckless person. Her step is actually very particular. Unfortunately, there are not many people in 9 regions who can see it. On the stellar peak of Spirit Sword Mountain, the sect leader sat alone in the bamboo room as still as a rock, as if he was connected with the whole Spirit Sword Mountain. Wang Wu's step just now shocked many people, but it did not shake him, because he had expected that Wang Wu would take that step. The core of the 9 regions map seemed to be Hichu, but it was actually him. As long as Feng Yin could hold on, this great array could be maintained for a long time, and Wang Wu could also hold on for a long time, and it was even possible to fight a beautiful counterattack. Just as Feng Yin was about to further expand the scope of absorption and send more surrounding spiritual energy to Wang Wu, someone suddenly came to report. Feng Ling asked to see him. Chapter 798. Feng Ling asked to see him? Feng Yin Taoist master was quite surprised. What was she doing here at this time? But soon joy welled up in his heart. Who cares what she came here for? This was the first time in many years that little Ling Er took the initiative to visit him. Even if she accidentally ate the poisonous mushroom and had hallucinations, it didn't matter. Since she came, she couldn't leave. No, as long as she came, it was better than anything else. Moreover, what if it was his persistent dedication over the years that had influenced little Ling Er? What if little Ling Er really recognized him as her father and decided to be a filial daughter? This made him more ecstatic than Feng Yin's breakthrough in peak deity stage. However, the emotion that followed closely after was hesitation. At this moment he shouldn't be distracted, no matter how emotional or logical it was. Wang Wu's defensive battle in the crack in the sky was related to the life and death of the 9 regions, so there was no room for mistakes. Many people simply chose to go into seclusion. As for him occupying the stellar peak alone, he actually had the faint intention of not seeing outsiders. At this time he should be more focused. However, in the current situation, it seemed that there was no need to be so urgent. As the shadow core of the great array, Feng Yin bore a heavy responsibility, but the pressure was lighter than others. Because he knew his junior sister better than anyone else, so his work efficiency was more than a notch higher. When others had to concentrate, he could spare some energy to think about other things. So, should he spend some energy to entertain his daughter? This question did not make Feng Yin hesitate for a long time. Of course he had to entertain her. Not long after the decision was made, Feng Yin saw the figure of Feng Ling. As always, the little girl pouted her mouth and didn't look very happy. However, seeing her at the stellar peak made Feng Yin happier than anything else. Hee hee, little Ling er, you're here? Humph, what are you giggling about? You look like an idiot. Hee hee, what hee hee? If you laugh like that again, I'm leaving. Don't go, I won't laugh anymore. Feng Yin quickly closed his mouth, but his eyes that curved into a crescent moon couldn't be changed. At the same time, on the beheading immortal platform in the central region, a much-anticipated ceremony was about to begin. The execution ceremony of Dixian. The immortal executioner's platform was a squarish mountain. The peak of the mountain was level, and Bai Zhe, dressed in blood-red clothes, was tied to a thorny pillar by the immortal binding rope. All around him were bare mountain rocks, and his blood flowed through the cracks of the rocks. Countless cracks flowed in all directions like countless rivers, and it dyed the immortal executioner's platform like an overflowing wine glass. There was a sea of people at the foot of the mountain. The number of onlookers who had heard the news had already exceeded 10,000, and the scene was so crowded that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Flying was prohibited near the immortal beheading platform, so the cultivators stuck close to the ground. If they were too close, they wouldn't be able to see what was happening on the platform. However, the blood that flowed along the immortal beheading platform had already aroused their enthusiasm. Regarding this earth immortal who was tied to the thorny pillar, people's discussion was unprecedentedly enthusiastic. Most of them, of course, cursed him for his vicious attempt to sneak attack the Red Sea underwater workshop. Then, some of the more senior cultivators would share with everyone the glorious deeds of Bai Zhe during the grand competition 15 years ago. This guy is not a good thing from the beginning. If it weren't for him, it's likely that we wouldn't have to fight against the Dixian at all, which would have added a lot of losses and even killed a lot of our brothers. Hey, I heard that it was done by a man named Black. They're all the same, not a good thing. In addition, some people questioned why he would commit suicide to sneak attack the Red Sea underwater workshop. It was the most important place in 9 regions today. It was designed and built according to the standard that it could withstand the attack of the fallen immortals. He was just a mere Dixian, not the strongest among the Dixians, so why would he go to the Red Sea underwater workshop to court death? Was there any secret in it? However, the speculation about this would soon be overturned. This Bai Zhe is simply an idiot. During the grand competition, he was already played by Taoist master Nan-Fei's. It is said that at that time his strength had not yet reached the Deshang stage. Wang Lu, who was only at the peak of King Pil, also fought against him and seemed to have won. Can be seen how weak this guy is. Because Bai Zhe was stupid enough, no matter what stupid thing he did, there seemed to be a reasonable explanation. In the midst of people's discussion, time went by, and soon it was time for the execution. The cultivators of Xingjing sect, who were in charge of the execution, stood on the 4 hills around the beheading immortal platform and jointly cast spells. In a moment, a dark cloud covered the sun. Electric snakes scuttled in the dark cloud, and there came the sound of rolling thunder. The so-called beheading immortal platform was not to use an immortal sword or a treasured knife to behead an immortal, but to borrow the power of the heavenly thunder and the divine tribulation to behead a person. When the tribulation thunder fell, the body of the person on the thorny pillar naturally collapsed and the soul turned into ashes, which was cleaner and more thorough than any immortal treasure. Bai Zhe looked up at the approaching tribulation thunder, but his heart was actually at peace. What should be done has been done. Although the result was not ideal, he had no regrets. From a very early time he had been accustomed to setbacks. In fact, objectively speaking, Bai Zhe was not stupid. If he was really stupid, how could he cultivate to the Mahayana stage and join Sun Buping's team? However, Bai Zhe's life was indeed full of frustrations, as if there was really a mysterious will between heaven and earth that prevented him from doing something. Therefore, he simply cultivated the negation immortal technique, which could be regarded as a different path. After embarking on this path, he was accustomed to failure. Because the object of his negation was Sun Buping, out of 100 of his negation opinions, not even one could be adopted. Most of the time, his hard advice was like nonsense, and even provoked the resentment of others. However, Bai Zai still persisted. It was very fulfilling but also very hard. Fortunately, the hard road finally came to an end. He reluctantly lowered his head and saw the flowing river of blood and the crowd under the beheading immortal platform. Although he heard the sound of cursing, Bai Zai's heart was as calm as the lake. Next, it's up to you. Xia Xiaohe was a terrifying opponent. By playing hard to get and pretending to go to the western continent, the situation between Bai Zai and Xian Mo completely collapsed. When Bai Zai learned that Xia Xiaohe was still in 9 regions, he knew that his plan to disperse the risk had failed, so he resolutely attacked the Red Sea underwater workshop in order to die. But strangely, he did not die on the spot, as if there was some mysterious force that protected him at the critical moment, allowing him to be captured alive and then sent to the beheading immortal platform to be beheaded in public. Bai Zai guessed that the person who caused mischief should be Xia Xiaohe, but he could not guess the other party's purpose. Just to increase the amount of torture he had to endure? This was making a big fuss over a minor issue. However, Xia Xiaohe was mysterious and unpredictable, so there was no need to guess her motive. What's the use of thinking so much for a dying person? In 9 regions there was Wang Lu who had so many ideas, so let him compete with Xia Xiaohe. Thinking of this, he heard the thunder above his head getting louder and louder, and the distance of the heavenly tribulation was getting closer and closer. Bai Zai closed his eyes and quietly waited for the arrival of the trial. However, before the trial came, he heard a familiar voice. Bai Zai, I'm here. The next moment, Bai Zai woke up and incredulously looked at the woman who appeared in front of him. Why are you here? I'm here to save you. Xian Mo's expression was unwavering. Are you kidding me? Are you out of your mind? Bai Zai angrily said, Did I say anything to you before in vain? Let's go or else it'll be too late. At the same time, countless people on and off the beheading immortal platform stared at the woman who suddenly appeared. Who was she? Enthusiastic audience? However, when the heavenly tribulation was about to come, she flew so high and so close. Did she want to die together? The tribulation thunder summoned by Xingjing sect cultivators didn't recognize people. However, soon, people saw an ominous sign from the sudden change in the faces of several Xingjing sect cultivators. This uninvited guest probably didn't come with good intentions. There was going to be a big change in this beheading immortal ceremony. In front of the thorn pillar, Xian Mo smiled and said, I regret it. You, Xian Mo said, I don't want to stand on Xia Xiaohe's side, nor do I want to stand on the side of 9 regions. I just want to stand on your side. Are you crazy? Xian Mo opened her mouth to say a few words, but her voice was covered by the thunder above her head. Thus she looked up and said, Separate. The next moment, the thick thunderclouds suddenly opened. A crack from south to north tore open the clouds, and then swept to both sides. In the blink of an eye, the thunderclouds were swallowed up. Xian Mo. Bai Zai's eyes almost popped out of their sockets as he roared loudly. He was not surprised that Xian Mo could tear apart the heavenly tribulation, but he was shocked by the purpose of Xian Mo to do so. This was the beheading immortal platform of the central region, and Xingjing sect was not far away. Making a scene here was tantamount to seeking one's own death, which would not be better than him breaking into the Red Sea underwater workshop. Xian Mo's step was tantamount to letting everything before go down the drain. The two of them would only die worthlessly. So what? Xian Mo gently smiled. Actually, I've long wanted to say that the future of this continent will be cared about by the people of this continent, so why do you and I need to risk our lives like this? Didn't you hear what the people below just said? Bai Zai said in a muffled voice, Why bother with those ignorant people? Since there's no need to care about these ignorant people, just let them die. I know you're eager to refute me again. You always like to refute others, but this time I won't give you the chance to speak. With that, Xian Mo stuck a golden talisman paper on Bai Zai's mouth. Then she waved her hand to cut off the thorn pillar, tore the binding immortal rope, picked up Bai Zai in her hand, and then her figure flashed away. During the whole process, among the nearly 10,000 cultivators around the beheading immortal platform, no one could react and stop her. Nice escape. Unfortunately, they're already dead. Not far from the beheading immortal platform, Xia Xiaohe watched Xian Mo go away, shook her head with a smile, and then turned her head to ask, How many people do you think the Wanxian League will send to kill them? And if Xian Mo resists, how many people will he kill? Then, how much impact will it have on the 9 regions map after killing these people? Next to Xia Xiaohe, a man in a red and white robe replied, It doesn't matter how many people die, but the chaos caused by this matter is important. Bai Zai and Xian Mo have a high prestige in the Dixian camp. Being chased and killed like this will chill the hearts of many people. Tisk, it's simply absurd to publicly execute Bai Zhe on the beheading immortal platform. If it weren't for the fact that so many capable people have been transferred to the 9 regions map, leaving behind a group of incompetent people to temporarily replace them, such a decision would not have been made. Xia Xiaohe said softly with a sincere and concerned look, "Oh, then what should we do now? You see, although you know it in your heart with me here, you have no way to clean up the situation." Wang Lu smiled and said, "So what? As long as you're killed, this loss is nothing at all. Thank you for your support. The PV competition has been settled. Let's wait for the animation to come out." Chapter 799. You want to kill me? What? Xia Xiaohe giggled. I think I'm very generous and benevolent. Not only did I leave a glimmer of hope for the people of 9 regions, not only do I give you 9 regions people a chance to live, but even the 2 traitors Bai Zhe and Shenemo, I also gave them their last good time. Where can you find such a good person? If you kill me, there will only be a group of cold-blooded and inhumane guys left in the immortal world. Wang Lu said, That's even better. No one will try to solve the problem by surrendering. What's wrong with surrendering? A wise man submits to circumstances. Xia Xiaohe asked. Although it sounds very heroic and tragic to resist to the last soldier, it's essentially a kind of willfulness. Creatures should take survival and reproduction as their first priority, not die in vain for the sake of nothingness. What's the point of your stubborn resistance except for self-satisfaction? For you, it doesn't matter if everything in 9 regions vanishes for your own selfish desire? What's the difference in the result of surrendering to you? Wang Lu sneered and said, Hundreds of millions of creatures in 9 regions will be wiped out, and the few survivors will become livestock. What's the difference between this shameful result and extinction? Moreover, who can guarantee that after surrendering to you, you will keep your promise and provide shelter for the survivors? Xia Xiaohe blinked and said, If you're worried about my credibility, then there's really no need. I'm the daughter of Xia Yu, a unique existence in all the worlds. I won't lie. Won't lie? Wang Lu curled his lips in the direction of Bai Zhe and Shen Mo's departure and said, There are 2 people over there who have been deceived by you. They brought it upon themselves, you can't blame me. Xia Xiaohe shrugged and said, If they honestly followed my instructions, how could they be like this now? In the final analysis, they betrayed me first. If you can be obedient after surrendering, I won't kill you. I have a good impression of the civilization on this continent. There's no proof, show some sincerity. Xia Xiaohe blinked in confusion. What kind of sincerity do you want? Wang Lu said, Let me *CKU. What did you say? The air between the 2 of them cooled down at an alarming rate, and the bright and beautiful mountaintop was instantly covered in frost. Wang Lu turned a blind eye to it and continued, I said that as long as you let me *CKU once, I'll believe you. There's an old saying in JoJo, if I *CKU once, we'll be friends for life. Come, since you are so generous and kind, come and be my friend for life. As he spoke, he saw that Xia Xiaohe's anger was gathering at an alarming speed. Wang Lu smiled provocatively. Or is it that your long speech just now was just bullshit? You talk so much, but when it comes to the essence you start to make excuses. Or could it be that you, the little princess of the immortal world, have never tasted meat after living for tens of thousands of years? Still a fledgling? It's okay, I'll be gentle. Wang Lu, you're really a reckless guy. Xia Xiaohe's face was cold, and the light smile just now had completely disappeared. I thought I could have some common language with you, but it seems that I overestimated you, a person from another world. It's really the misfortune of JoJo to let a person like you become the number 1 in JoJo. Today I will kill you first and then subdue JoJo. Haha, come on. However, just when Wang Lu was ready to fight with Xia Xiaohe, he saw her body sway, cut through the space, opened a mysterious passage and disappeared in a flash. I won't fight with a barbarian like you who has no sense of beauty. If you want to kill me, then come and chase me. Otherwise, I don't know what I'll do. *CK. Wang Lu's reaction was fast enough, but when he chased after her, he could only touch the slight fluctuation left by the healing of the space. This Xia Xiaohe was too slippery. As the princess of the immortal world, her strength in frontal combat was not necessarily strong, but she was cunning and had a variety of means, which was impossible to guard against. In order to deal with this variable, Wang Lu deployed a lot of power to set up an inescapable net. However, she still seized the opportunity to run away. However, this result was not too surprising. If Xia Xiaohe was really easy to be captured, that would be unexpected. As for where Xia Xiaohe would escape to after the feint, Wang Lu could roughly guess. It was very simple. At present, in 9 regions, which was the most vulnerable and most afraid of being hit by external forces, she was most likely to appear there. After pacing 2 steps in place, Wang Lu closed his eyes, raised his right hand, and stretched out an antenna from the tip of his middle finger. It was the high-power communication device of the giant divine weapon. Then he connected it to a huge immortal array that connected the 9 regions. Wang Wu, can you hear me? What the hell, are you sick? You suddenly talk in my head. I'm so scared that my life is shortened. Don't talk nonsense, Xia Xiaohe is probably going to your side. Be careful. Don't be careless. I always feel that things are not that simple. I don't want to talk about Xia Xiaohe, but Paksu hasn't shown up yet. I don't believe that he is idle now. If Xia Xiaohe's goal is you, Paksu is likely to make a move together with her. Let them come. At this time, Wang Wu's confidence seemed to have swelled to the point of being out of control. It doesn't matter if they all come together. I am now the world. F***ck. After the last word, Wang Wu's voice stopped abruptly, and there was silence in the channel. Wang Lu was silent for a while, took a deep breath, and then waved the antenna on his right hand to connect to the great array of 9 regions map in another way. He looked down at the great array from a detached perspective and soon found a collapsed link. The shadow core of 9 regions map, the node on the stellar peak of Spirit Sword Mountain in Blue River region, was suddenly broken. In the astral wind layer of the 9th sky, Xian Mo carried Bai Zhe and fled quickly, striving for a chance of survival in a desperate situation. However, Bai Zhe refused to cooperate at all and struggled in her hands. Xian Mo, put me down. Xian Mo. Do you hear me? Put me down. Xian Mo was extremely annoyed. Shut up, aren't you afraid that the astral wind will blow into your stomach and crush your internal organs? Really, even a silence immortal talisman can't shut your mouth. Bai Zhe was silent for a moment and then said, I'm already a dead man, you don't need to care so much. Shut up. I can see if you're dead or not. While speaking, a whistling astral wind came head-on from the front. Xian Mo's heart tightened. The astral wind in the 9th sky was the most powerful. The power of the high gale was close to the heavenly tribulation. Although she was not afraid of being hurt, she was afraid that her speed would be slowed down and the pursuers behind her would catch up. Therefore, Xian Mo squeezed herself fiercely, and every pore of her body spurted out pure immortal spirit, which then condensed into a great immortal technique. Yin and Yang divide. Under the tearing of the immortal technique, the invincible astral wind was divided into Yin and Yang, which immediately lost its sharpness. Xian Mo went up against the wind and instantly passed through the astral wind area. It was just that, after this great immortal technique, she felt a burst of fatigue. Her speed involuntarily slowed down. And just when she suddenly realized it, the voice of her former companion came from behind her. Sister Xian Mo, please stop. This was Luo Shui, a great talented woman in Dixian. Usually she was a bit weird and arrogant, but at critical times she always insisted on her unique gentleness. Xian Mo, it's not too late to turn back now. If there's any problem, we'll help you explain it together. Don't let things get out of hand. The voice was broad, and this was the Foodie Food Immortal. Bai Zhe abandoned himself and cast a big mistake that can't be redeemed even if he dies 100 times. You don't have to sacrifice yourself for such a scum. The tone was extremely harsh, but the meaning behind the words was still for her benefit. This was the old man who had been a teacher and friend for many years, Qin Guangmo. However, hearing the voices of these companions, Xian Mo felt a burst of sadness in her heart. Could it be that none of you are willing to trust Bai Zhe? Must you force him into a dead end? Compared to your own companions, are you even more willing to trust those younger cultivators? Well, who you want to believe, who you want to help, it's your freedom. We're already very tired, just let us go. In fact, Xian Mo knew in her heart that her companions who were following behind were indeed secretly letting them go. Otherwise, with their speed, they would have caught up with her long ago. After all, she was not good at speed. However, they let him go because of her, but for Bai Zhe they really intended to kill him. During this time, they unhurriedly hung behind, waiting for Xian Mo to let go of Bai Zhe. After that, they would bring Bai Zhe back to the Behead Immortal platform, and Xian Mo could turn a blind eye, letting her fly freely in the sky. But how could Xian Mo let go of Bai Zhe? So there was no hope of breaking this deadlock. Until a cold voice came in. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and take down those 2 people for me. Hearing this voice, Luo Shui, Food Immortal, and the others showed a look of displeasure and even disgust. This person was called Supreme Ling Dao. He came from Kunlun Immortal. Because of his good cultivation base and good at currying favor, after many years of hard work, he successfully entered the Heavenly Sage Hall and had a respected status. At this time, because the high-level power of the Wanxian League was seriously transferred, he was temporarily assigned to supervise and manage a group of Dixian camp. This task was not easy to do. To connect the Wanxian League and the Dixian camp, it required quite a clever skill. To be able to hold a high position in the Heavenly Sage Hall, Supreme Ling Dao's mind and skill were actually quite good. However, he was blinded by hatred. During the grand competition, his illegitimate son died in the hands of Dixian. This was not discovered when the personnel of the Heavenly Sage Hall were appointed. At this time, Supreme Ling Dao was in power, and a sense of revenge spontaneously arose. The evidence of the betrayal of Bai Zhe and Shanimo is conclusive. If you dare to cover them up, you will be guilty of the same crime as the two of them. When Master Wang Lu comes back, none of you will have a good end. Hearing the name of Wang Lu, several Dixian people were somewhat helpless and afraid, so they had to speed up their actions. Once Luo Shui and the others got serious, Shanimo no longer had a chance. It wasn't long before she was stopped. Then she almost collapsed on the spot. Why won't you let us go? Supreme Ling Dao sneered and said, Why? You, a shameless and lowly woman, actually have the face to ask such a question? You two surrendered to the fallen immortals, abandoned yourselves and have long been the public enemies of the continent. Who would let you go? Luo Shui frowned and said, Supreme Ling Dao, I think there's a secret about the two of them betraying the enemy. Secret? What kind of secret can make up for this great crime of betrayal? Supreme Ling Dao was furious. You Dixian people simply don't know what's good for you. The two of them are traitors. There's no need to ask for the reason, just kill them directly. But the food immortal couldn't stand it anymore and stood up to speak. Shut up. Supreme Ling Dao's eyes were red. I don't want to listen to your nonsense. You, go and abolish the cultivation of those two people, and then I'll take them to the Behead Immortal platform and let the world see the fate of traitors. The food immortal, who was named by Supreme Ling Dao, was silent for a long time, and then shook his head and said, I can't do it. Can't do it? Fine, then let's change it to someone who can do it. Luo Shui, you do it. Abolish the cultivation of these two people, and then cut off their limbs, cripple their bodies. Luo Shui looked up angrily and said, It's enough to catch them, there's no need to torture them, right? No need? If we don't torture them, how can we warn others? If we treat this kind of traitor well, what about those who are fighting on the front line? What, you don't want to do it? Fine, Qing Guangmu, you do it, abolish their cultivation, break their limbs and then take off their clothes. When we go back, let the world see their shameful skin and flesh. That's enough. Qing Guangmu flew into a rage. You're not carrying out official duties at all, you're purely abusing your position to avenge a private grudge. Yes, I'm abusing my position to avenge a private grudge, so what? I let you do it, are you going to do it or not? Let me remind you one last time, every detail of what happened now, I will report it to His Excellency Wang Lu when I go back. Luo Shui coldly said, Wang Lu will not support you to do this. Then let's wait and see. Supreme Ling Dao sneered. Yes, in theory Wang Lu would not support him to use such a drastic means, because it would undoubtedly intensify the contradiction between the two sides. However, that was only in theory. As the number one person in 9 regions, Wang Lu was busy every day, so how could he have the time to carefully examine every detail? As long as his report was beautifully written and watertight, perhaps Wang Lu would not know the details of the matter at all. At that time, wouldn't it be clear at a glance which side he would make a judgment in favor of? Of course, this was tantamount to challenging the authority of Wang Lu, which was tantamount to deceiving the monarch. However, thinking of his beloved son who died tragically in the arena, Supreme Ling Dao could not care so much. It seems that none of you are willing to do it? Fine, then I'll do it myself. Don't think that I can't do anything to you just because you two have a higher realm than me and a protective immortal spirit. Supreme Ling Dao sneered and took out 2 instruments of torture. One was an iron pillar with thorns, and the other was an iron ball like a sea urchin. Seeing the 2 instruments of torture, the countenance of Luo Shui and the others changed greatly. It was the work of the Red Sea Underwater Workshop, which could ignore the damage caused by Dishan's protective immortal spirit. At this time, both Bai Zhe and Shanimo were restrained and could not resist. If the instrument of torture fell on their bodies, it would be worse than death. However, it was one thing to refrain from making a move against his companions, but another thing to attack Ling Dao. Although what he did at this time was bad, he was, after all, the representative of the Wanxian League. However, Just as Supreme Ling Dao approached Bai Zhe and Xian Mo, grinning and ready to activate the instrument of torture. Ah, this trash is really an eyesore. A red light flashed and Supreme Ling Dao was broken in the middle, divided into two parts. Then the red light spread and swallowed the two parts of the corpse in an instant. The next moment, the red light turned into a human figure, and Xia Xiaohe walked out of the red light. Looks like I came at the right time? Her smile was still sincere and full of concern. This chapter has a lot of words, so I wrote it a bit late. Sorry. By the way, I recommend a book that is about to be finished, My Beautiful Little Fox Fairy. Chapter 800. Xia Xiaohe, who came at the right time, was soon ruthlessly attacked. The immortal technique of a peak Mahayana stage cultivator smashed over like a storm, forcing her to dodge left and right, which made her look very embarrassed. Hey guys, don't be in such a hurry. We have no enmity with each other, so we should be peaceful and friendly. Who wants to be peaceful and friendly with you? Qin Guangmu's eyes were as red as blood, and his hands were constantly changing gestures to adjust the attribute of immortal spirit. Like a tide, powerful immortal technique poured out, turning the world upside down. Such a fierce offensive naturally did not come without a price. Although Qin Guangmu had a long experience, his cultivation base was not the top among the group of Dixian. Although he also had the cultivation base of Mahayana stage, there was still a long way to go before the immortal spirit baptism. He could not use immortal spirit freely like Xian Mo and Bai Zhe, and the use of immortal technique was greatly restricted. The price of Qin Guangmu breaking through the limit was to overdraft his jade mansion and burn his lifespan. The hatred between him and the fallen immortal was too deep. He joined Dixian very early, so it could be said that he had watched his companions sacrifice themselves along the way. The hatred between them had long been irreconcilable. Hey, don't think of me as a fallen immortal in the general sense. If I'm one of those murderous executioners, I would at least sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. How could I generously help you solve a big problem? Who knows what tricks you're playing? The food immortal coldly snorted. Xia Xiaohe smiled and said, Since you don't know what tricks I have, why did you attack me so boldly? Aren't you afraid of being ambushed by me? By the way, the little sister over there who is trying to contact the support, you'd better think about it clearly. If you contact the people of the Wanxian League now, what will happen? Do you really want to see your companions being sacrificed by a group of lowly ants? With that, Xia Xiaohe pointed to Bai Zhe and Xian Mo. You still have the face to mention them. If it weren't for you, how could they be like this? Then don't you want to know why they would put aside their blood feud with the fallen immortal and join my side? At this point, Xia Xiaohe suddenly stopped and let Qin Guangmu's golden light penetrate her chest. She spat out half a mouthful of blood and said in a low voice, Qin Guangmu, have you vented your anger a little? The anger in Qin Guangmu's heart had yet to subside, but looking at Xia Xiaohe's appearance, he couldn't continue to attack. Perhaps Sun Buping's evaluation of him in the past was correct. He was cold on the outside but warm on the inside. On the surface he was stern, but in his bones he was so gentle that it made people sigh. He was not suitable to fight on the battlefield. He couldn't even bear to kill his mortal enemy. He was really, pooh. Qin Guangmu's heart was agitated, and he also spat out a mouthful of blood. As he spat out this mouthful of blood, the redness in his eyes faded. The rest of the people looked at each other and stopped attacking. In fact, most of these people were indecisive and lacked the nimbleness of a swift and decisive blade. Otherwise, Xian Mo wouldn't have been able to escape with Bai Zhe for so long. The truly ferocious and decisive Dixian did not follow. Seeing that the situation had stabilized, Xia Xiaohe coughed twice and said in a low voice, I'm very sorry for what happened in the past. Humph, there's no need to say this kind of hypocritical words. What do you want to do? Xia Xiaohe shook her head and said, I'm very serious. I was born in the immortal world, so I actually don't know much about 9 regions. I only know that this is one of the countless lower realms, and the immortal world can kill and seize it. However, now that I've come to 9 regions, my idea has changed a lot. Although the power of 9 regions is not as good as that of the immortal world, it is the foundation of the immortal world. It has a unique charm that the immortal world does not have. I like it here very much, so I don't want to see 9 regions and the immortal world continue to fight like this. I can make an oath that there's no falsehood in this mood. If you don't believe me, you can ask them. Thus, Luo Shuai and the others immediately turned their attention to Bai Zhe and Xian Mo. Bai Zhe smiled and said, Yes, in a sense she's right. Compared with the other fallen immortals, she does have a bit more favorable impression of 9 regions, but, however, before he could finish his words, Bai Zhe felt a strong dizziness and weakness, which made him unable to go on. Previously, when he was tied to the thorn pillar and bled like a sea, even Dixian couldn't support it. Shen Mo, on the other hand, was focused on taking care of Bai Zhe and had no intention to explain other things. When Luo Shui and the others heard this, their minds suddenly changed. Well, even if you're different from the other fallen immortals, so what? Can you resolve the blood feud between the two sides? Or can you stop the crisis of the fallen immortals? Xia Xiaohe shook her head and said, I can't do any of these. At most, I can only guarantee that there are hundreds of thousands of survivors in 9 regions that will not be wiped out. Hundreds of thousands? Do you know how many people there are in 9 regions? Are you kidding me? Are you deliberately making fun of us? When everyone finished questioning, Xia Xiaohe said, what I can do is indeed very, very limited, but it's much better than nothing at all. It's irrational to be an enemy of the immortal world. You can't imagine what kind of power the immortal world has. Right now, it can survive only because the passage between the two worlds has not been opened. But now that the passage is opened, the gatekeeper alone will not be able to hold on for long. Once the army of the immortal world comes, there's no need to say more about the fate of 9 regions. At that time, these hundreds of thousands of survivors are the tinder, the hope, just like how you buried your hope in the group of immortal tombs and let go of everything else. So why can't you do it again now? With that, Xia Xiaohe smiled at them and said, I know that this kind of thing is of great importance and you can't make a decision immediately. So I think you might as well think about it first and give me a reply in a few days. After Xia Xiaohe left, Luo Shui and the others felt a little confused. What should we do next? They looked at each other and had no idea. Among them, immortal Luo Shui was the most intelligent and had the most ideas. However, she rarely acted as a decision-maker, so she couldn't make a decision on such a big matter. The food immortal suddenly said, I say, instead of thinking so far ahead, it's better to think about it first. Supreme Ling Dao was killed by that person, how do we explain it to the Wanxian League? Everyone suddenly understood. This was indeed a big problem. The death of Supreme Ling Dao could be said to be self-inflicted, at least it had nothing to do with them. However, how could they explain this to the people of the Wanxian League? At that time they would not be able to deal with a single question. That Xia Xiaohe only killed Supreme Ling Dao, but she was unscathed to them? How could they explain this? Should they tell the people of the Wanxian League that Xia Xiaohe wanted to instigate them, so she showed mercy and didn't resist? Then the next development was obvious. These instigated targets would never see the sun of 9 regions again. They would certainly be imprisoned in the death row for life. With the example of Supreme Ling Dao, Luo Shui and the others did not dare to think that the people of the Wanxian League were too kind. When they thought of this problem, they were full of complaints. The union of 10,000 immortals is really disgusting. Although that kid Wang Lu is not bad, right now he can't manage the union of 10,000 immortals. Thus, demons and monsters come forth in large numbers, which is really unbearable. Yes, so it's not unreasonable that Bai Zhe didn't agree to hand over the inheritance to them. Except for a few elites, most of the younger generation cultivators are just a group of dregs. So, maybe Xia Xiaohe's suggestion can be considered? Hey, don't talk nonsense. What are you afraid of? No one else can hear you here? While they were discussing, Shen Mo was still taking care of Bai Zhe. At this time he suddenly found that Bai Zhe moved his fingers as if he wanted to say something, but because he was too weak to do so. Shen Mo quickly injected his immortal spirit into Bai Zhe to let him breathe a sigh of relief. But after Bai Zhe recovered, he said something that shocked Shen Mo, I think it's time for me to die. What nonsense are you talking about? Luo Shui and the others were deceived by Xia Xiaohe's flowery words and are repeating our mistakes. Someone must stand up to wake them up, and no words are as powerful as the bloody reality. Xia Xiaohe killed Ling Dao and pushed Luo Shui and the others into a predicament, but my death can give an explanation to the Wanxian League and free Luo Shui and the others. In the end, as long as they insist that Xia Xiaohe forced me to die, it is tantamount to cutting off the possibility of peaceful coexistence between the two sides, and Xia Xiaohe's tricks will all fail. So, for the current situation, my death is the best for all sides. Shen Mo opened his mouth, but found that he had nothing to say, only silence. Bai Zhe sighed softly, and I'm really tired. Shen Mo was silent for a long time, and suddenly smiled at Bai Zhe. What you said is not enough. If you want to completely cut off the possibility of peaceful coexistence between the two sides, it's not enough to just kill you. After all, you're not very popular among the Earth Immortals. But if you add me, it'll be different. At this moment, Bai Zhe's eyes widened. Shen Mo, you? Shen Mo gently hugged Bai Zhe. I am also very tired. Don't forget that in the past 5 years, I have experienced the same torture as you. So, don't think about getting rid of me and relaxing alone. Bai Zhe was dumbfounded. After a long time, his expression gradually melted by Xian Mo's body temperature. Yes, we are all very tired, let's rest together. At the same time as the number one person in Jiuzhou, Wang Lu began to feel a little overwhelmed. There were more and more problems that he needed to deal with. Xia Xiaohe had escaped several times, which had become a big problem. Feng Yin on the stellar peak had a sudden situation, which caused the operation of the entire 9 regions map to be blocked. Wang Wu's situation in the crack in the sky suddenly became difficult and precarious. The people of the Wanxian League became more and more outrageous, and the friction with Dixian was almost obvious. The Red Sea underwater workshop also encountered technical difficulties, which was difficult to break through with his own strength. Everything was so urgent and almost everything had to be done by him. The reputation of the number one person in Jiuzhou was resounding, and the burden was also terrible. And Wang Lu was very clear that he could not deal with all these things at the same time, so he must prioritize and do it step by step. However, judging from the current situation, any matter that was ranked at the back was very likely to rapidly ferment and deteriorate, and eventually get out of hand. This was like a burning mess, and it was very difficult to sort out the clues, let alone solve the whole problem. It seems that it is necessary to change the way of thinking. Wang Lu flew in the sky and reflected on his previous series of actions. In a sense, he did not do anything wrong, and every step of the decision had sufficient reasons. But obviously the effect was not good. If I want to solve this dilemma, I must first find a breakthrough. Wang Lu took a long breath, launched the abnormally powerful computing ability of the giant divine weapon, and put all the information he knew into it for processing. After an unknown period of time, a light flashed in his mind. Yes, it's him. I wish all the friends who are taking the college entrance examination well. P.S. If you feel good after the exam, you can consider giving me a tip to let me know that your situation is okay. Chapter 801. Somewhere in 9 regions. The fox girl, bathed in blood, staggered into the cave. Her handsome face was covered with blood, which showed a kind of coquettish beauty. In the cave, Senior Immortal Poxa had been waiting for a long time. When he saw her bloody face, he could not help but be startled. The fox girl shrugged and said, "I'm sorry, although I tried very hard, I still haven't done it." Senior Immortal Poxa smiled and said, "You did a good job. Although you couldn't kill him on the spot, you seriously injured Feng Yin and successfully broke the great array of 9 regions. That's enough." The fox girl frowned and tried to clench her fist, but her right hand trembled. She said, "Actually, I had the opportunity to kill him just now. When I sneak attacked him, he was defenseless. As a human, his body was particularly fragile. I could actually capture his jade mansion and destroy his body and soul. But when I made my move, my right hand was somewhat disobedient, as if something was deliberately holding me back." When Senior Immortal Poxa heard this, his expression changed and he said, "Disobedient? Do you still have feelings for him in your heart?" The fox girl laughed at herself and said, "Still have feelings for him?" Senior Immortal's words really make me feel wronged and want to cry. After closing her eyes and being silent for a moment, the fox girl seriously said, "I was sealed by him for 100 years and fell to the mortal world like a puppet plaything. This kind of deep hatred, even if I personally kill the whole Spirit Sword Mountain, it would still be difficult to eliminate it. If there's anything that I haven't finished yet, it's the endless anger in my heart." With that, a few horizontal lines suddenly bloomed on the fox girl's cheeks, and a stream of fire spirit gushed out of her body and turned into several substantial tails behind her. The edge of the cave was instantly melted, showing a blazing light. Senior Immortal Poxa smiled and patted her on the shoulder. The fire spirit of the fox girl was extinguished in an instant. "Enough, I know. This time it's just the remnant soul of Feng Ling, not your subjective consciousness. But how long are you going to take to get rid of Feng Ling?" The fox girl said, "Very soon. The imprint left on me over the past 100 years can't be said to be not deep, but it's just an episode in my long life. For me, serving the immortal world is my lifelong mission. Immortal Venerable, may I ask what we should do next?" Senior Immortal Poxa touched his chin and said, "Xia Xiaohe didn't say. I think she should be acting freely. I want to catch someone now. Why don't you help me catch her?" "What kind of person is worthy of Senior Immortal's attention?" "Wang Wu." The fox girl was taken aback. "Isn't she already trapped in the passage and caught by Venerable Yen Luo?" Senior Immortal Poxa said, "How could it be that easy?" That girl is a top-notch collection that I'm interested in. With Yen Luo and her subordinates, it's easy to trap her, but it's difficult to capture her alive. However, the great formation of 9 regions has been broken by you, so it is only a matter of time before she is caught by Yen Luo. I want you to work with me to catch her before Yen Luo does. It would be troublesome if such a perfect collection fell into the hands of others. The fox girl rolled her eyes, but what if venerable Yen Luo gets in the way? Senior Immortal Paksu took a look at her, and his eyes showed a bone-chilling coldness. Someone is in the way? What do you think we should do? I understand. The fox girl nodded quickly with a well-behaved look. Okay, next. Senior Immortal Paksu stretched out his hand and gently grasped the space vein. He was about to tear the space and open a passage to the crack in the sky. At this moment there was a sound of footsteps outside the cave. Hearing the footsteps, Senior Immortal Paksu was shocked, and his hand that held the space vein could not help but loosen. Then he turned his head and stared at the person with great shock in his eyes. It's you? I heard you were looking for me, so I came. Outside the cave, the woman in white was holding a green bamboo in her hand, like a noble lotus flower. Her face was reflected red by the fire, like a red lotus bathed in fire. Wangwu? Senior Immortal Paksu narrowed his eyes in disbelief and repeatedly examined the woman in front of him with his immortal eyes. However, no matter how many times he looked, it was still the Wangwu who haunted him. Why are you here? Wangwu scratched her head and said, If I say that I miss you, will you accept it? Senior Immortal Paksu laughed angrily and said, Do you think I'm an idiot? After a pause, Senior Immortal Paksu frowned and said, However, it's rare for you to escape from Yenlua's killing array, but then come to me. Do you really miss me? Wangwu clapped her hands and said, Yes, if I didn't miss you, I would have gone back to Spirit Sword Mountain. Why bother to come to this wilderness? What do you miss me? Senior Immortal Paksu seemed a little hesitant. Wangwu blinked and said, I want to be your collection. Senior Immortal Paksu almost coughed and said, What did you say? Wangwu blinked her eyes seriously and made a sincere and lovely expression. I mean, I'm moved by your art of collection and determined to be your collection. Wait a minute, do you know my art of collection? Of course I know, it's to seek eternal way in torture and pain. The Supreme Zen can say that all living beings are suffering, and you want to collect the suffering of all living beings in your collection. The more Wangwu said, the more Senior Immortal Paksu's eyes lit up. I didn't expect you to comprehend it to this level. Wangwu sighed and said, It was also the last time I fought with Senior Immortal that I felt the unique charm of immortal spirit, which greatly inspired me and made me comprehend the truth of the world. After that, I thought, if I could collect the suffering of all living beings in my body, what a wonderful feeling it would be. When Senior Immortal Paksu heard this, he was overjoyed. However, the fox girl next to him coldly interrupted. Your words sound a bit absurd. The instinct of living beings is to seek benefits and avoid harm, to stay away from pain, but your idea is completely contrary to the nature of living beings. Wangwu said, Immortal cultivation is originally against the heaven. What's the difference between a person who can't disobey his nature and a beast? Of course, a mongrel like you who has transformed into a beast probably won't be able to understand this. You're quite sharp-tongued. However, although there are many cultivators who go against the heaven and like to chase after pain, there are only a few who can be made into a collection. Wangwu said, Isn't that a given? There are many mediocre people in the world. Most of them are muddle-headed and not worth mentioning. But I am a peerless pervert who likes to chase after pain, likes to be whipped, cut by sharp objects, burned by wax oil and penetrated by lightning. Think about it, if I'm not so perverted, how could I create a method like non-phase method that is purely for taking a beating? Well said. Without waiting for the fox girl to refute, Senior Immortal Paksu clapped his hands and praised, I really didn't misjudge you. To be able to say this, you're the perfect collection that I've been pursuing all my life. Well, don't waste any more time, come and accept my training and become the perfect collection. With that, Senior Immortal Paksu couldn't wait any longer. He gathered a huge amount of immortal spirit in his hand and walked toward Wangwu. Wait a minute. Wangwu stretched out a finger in front of her chest and propped up a golden polygon, which blocked the footsteps of Senior Immortal Paksu. She said, There's one more thing to do. Senior Immortal Paksu frowned and wanted to reach out to break the obstacle in front of him, but found that her sword defense was very strong. Do you want to go back on your word? No, I'm just thinking that in order to make it a perfect collection, we have to make sure that everything that happens next is foolproof. Immortal Venerable, are you really ready? Paksu was stunned for a moment, and then said with a smile, "Are you doubting my craftsmanship?" "It's not doubting the craftsmanship of Senior Immortal, but doubting whether someone will allow Senior Immortal to get the perfect collection." "Someone? Who do you mean? Who dares to hinder me from getting you? Is it Wang Lu?" "Humph, I'm going to kill him." "Senior Immortal, don't worry." Wang Wu shook her head gently and said, "Wang Lu is certainly an obstacle, but his ability is limited after all. Moreover, he's already under a lot of pressure. How could he have the energy to hinder us? The person I'm talking about is Xia Xiaohe." "Xia Xiaohe? Why is she in the way?" "Because she still needs Senior Immortal to do things for her and be driven by her. Imagine what the Immortal Venerable would do if he had obtained this perfect collection of mine." Senior Immortal Paksa said, "Naturally, he would play with you carefully and experience every inch of the beauty of your body. Look, the matter of 9 regions has been forgotten by Senior Immortal. Of course, Xia Xiaohe will not allow Senior Immortal to stay out of it. She will try her best to take me away and then use me as bait to drive you to do this and that. I think she must have done this kind of thing more than once when she was in the immortal world." Senior Immortal Paksa's face sank and said, "Yes, she is indeed the best at using this kind of method. Senior Immortal has always been unruly and rarely showed such flaws before. For Xia Xiaohe, this is a rare commodity. Think about it, if the Immortal Sovereign's vital part was really grasped by her, would she let go?" Senior Immortal Paksa's face became even uglier and said, "No. Not only that, she will constantly use me to stimulate Senior Immortal, such as handing me over to other teachers and leaving their marks on me. Bastard. I will never allow you to be tarnished by others." Wang Wu shrugged her shoulders and said, "Then you have to constantly listen to her orders and do everything for her. She is the princess of the immortal world. I'm afraid even her father will support this kind of imperial scheme." Senior Immortal Paksa didn't say a word, but his constantly trembling body fully explained his mood. "Of course, Xia Xiaohe is the princess of the immortal world. We can't kill her, but at least we can't let her trouble us, right?" Senior Immortal Paksu asked, "What are you going to do?" Wang Wu said, "It's very simple, make her a collection." Senior Immortal Paksa's eyes suddenly turned cold and he said, "Do you want to kill someone with a borrowed knife?" "Yes, but the person I want to kill is the enemy of Senior Immortal. Xia Xiaohe's death is good for both you and me." While Senior Immortal Paksu was still hesitating, Wang Wu said, "Now that the passage between the 2 worlds has been opened, and after I was defeated by Yen Luo, there is no qualified gatekeeper in 9 regions. Now Tetragon is leading his men to barely support it, but it's just a dying struggle. The army of the immortal world will soon break through the passage and arrive. At that time it will be too late to make a move. Just think about it, if Xia Xiaohe is also made into a collection, I'm afraid her collection value will not be lower than mine. Even if she can't be completely transformed and trained because of the face of the immortal king, even if it's just a little bit, it will be a milestone in the history of your collection. So, Senior Immortal, what are you waiting for now?" "Mfha." Senior Immortal Paksa laughed wildly and said, "Wang Wu, your trick of killing someone with a borrowed knife is too obvious. Do you think that my brain has become an idiot just because I have a demon in my heart?" Wang Wu shrugged her shoulders and then retracted the shield in front of her. "Since the Celestial Sovereign doesn't believe me, then I don't have any better ideas. Please, Celestial Sovereign, immediately turn me into your best collection. I just don't know if this collection will really fall into the Celestial Sovereign's hands." Before her voice fell, Senior Immortal Paksa's eyes changed. He just received Xia Xiaohe's order. "Come and meet me quickly." When Wang Wu saw the change in Senior Immortal Paksa's expression, she smiled and said, "Xia Xiaohe is really fast, isn't she?" In the end, Senior Immortal Paksa didn't make a move. Instead, he passed by Wang Wu's side, put one hand on her shoulder, and firmly bound her with an immortal spiritual lock. "Fox, look after her." Then, Senior Immortal Paksu left through the space passage to meet Xia Xiaohe. The fox girl nodded silently, and then turned to look at Wang Wu with a playful expression. "Who the hell are you?" Wang Wu shrugged her shoulders and said, "A perverted girl who has awakened her true nature. You should be able to see it. The real Wang Wu will not evaluate herself so maliciously. Your words and deeds remind me of a person. By the way, that person has a magical weapon that can change its appearance at will. If it is used for camouflage, I wonder if the effect would be good?" Wang Wu said with a smile, "Oh? I didn't expect that you, this fox, still have a lot of memories. Do your memories make you feel that, in fact, all these years in 9 regions, you've been very happy? Although you're just a mortal, you can be free and you don't have to be wantonly ordered by those high and mighty immortals? Your joke is good. Do you really think that's a joke? The fox girl coldly snorted and ignored Wang Wu. I don't care about your identity, so don't bother me. Chapter 802. Fox, let's have a chat, shall we? Fox, your tails are a bit asymmetrical. Do you need me to fix them for you? Fox, I'm hungry. Let me eat. In the cave, Wang Wu kept teasing the 9-tailed fox with words. However, the other party didn't give any response at all. She just closed her eyes and meditated. Fox, there's no need to be so vigilant, right? We are essentially the same kind of people. We should communicate more, enhance friendship, and help each other. Wang Wu talked incessantly and finally the 9-tailed fox opened her eyes. Save it, I'm not interested in listening to your nonsense. I'm the same kind of person as you? What a joke. Wang Wu suddenly became excited and said, aren't we the same kind of people? Although I'm a prisoner of war, you're just a servant soldier in the immortal world. You were thrown from the immortal world to 9 regions by the neck, and no one cared whether you were dead or alive for more than 100 years. I don't think your status is higher than mine. On the contrary, during the time when you ran the inn at the foot of Spirit Sword Mountain, although you were a mortal, who treated you as a servant and ordered you around. On the contrary, everyone in Spirit Sword Mountain regarded you as one of their own. Feng Yin, the dignified sect leader, has been slapped in the face by you many times, but he's willing to endure it. Do you think he's really a cheap wretch? He loves you as if you were his own daughter. Shut up. Do you think I'll believe it? I almost destroyed Lingjian School that year. I'm afraid he hates me to the bone. If he really hates you to the bone, can you live to this day? Even if 100 years ago the elders of Heavenly Sword Hall and Lingjian School had not reached the ultimate success realm and could not completely eliminate the 9-tailed fox, but in the following decades, the strength of Lingjian School continued to advance by leaps and bounds. Do you think Feng Yin really can't find a chance to destroy your body and soul? Not to mention anything else, when I inherited the giant divine weapon of Sun Booping, I had enough ability to destroy your soul, but Feng Yin never told me about your background. Alright, I'll take it as you're being magnanimous, but what does this have to do with me? In my opinion, this only means that you guys are really stupid and soft-hearted. You have no future at all. A future is earned, not something that falls from the sky. Right now, the immortal world is powerful, but 9 regions is not without the ability to resist. You think you can resist the immortal world? You have no idea how terrifying the power of the immortal world is. At most, there are only 100 true immortals. A world that is about to fall can't afford to raise too many immortals. That's why you want to invade 9 regions and plunder resources, right? The 9-tailed celestial fox laughed. Are you trying to trick me? You actually dare to play these little tricks in front of the 9-tailed celestial fox. You are quite bold. Wang Wu also smiled. Judging from your reaction, my guess was right. I have roughly calculated that 100 people is the current upper limit of the power of the immortal world. If there are more people, 9 regions is not worthy of your solemn treatment, even sending the princess. If there were too few people, not to mention other things, even the slave army might not be able to suppress them. So my guess is 100 people, and it seems that my guess is right. In that case, you should also be able to calculate that although our chance is slim, it's not impossible. Although the strength of 9 regions is weak, it is the ancestor of the immortal world. There have been countless great geniuses here. The Lingjian School alone is not as simple as outsiders think. You should have felt this when you made your move against that old man Feng Yin. At that moment, was it really your arm that didn't listen to you? So do me a favor. Hey, don't you think your turn is too stiff? That's why I say leave a line of life. Since there is still a line of life in 9 regions, why don't you invest a little bit on our side? Maybe there will be 1,000 times return in the future? In any case, you don't like that Xia Xiaohe, right? Let's kill Xia Xiaohe first and then we can talk about it slowly. What do you think? The 9-tailed celestial fox shook her tail and didn't speak. Since you don't object, then let me tell you what we should do next. When he saw Xia Xiaohe, Senior Immortal Pox's face was as gloomy as a dark cloud. The other party's summons clearly showed that she had bad intentions, so it was impossible for him to show any good attitude. Senior Immortal Pox was never a person who was easy to talk to. In the state of the heart demon, he had indeed become a lot gentler. However, once it was confirmed that his interests were hindered, he could become more ruthless than normal. He had been to the endless immortal prison more than once or twice. He could not even give face to the immortal king, let alone a mere princess of the immortal world? Xia Xiaohe saw the gloomy face of Senior Immortal Paksu and asked coldly, "Did you see Wang Wu?" "Yes." Paksu asked impatiently, "And then?" "And then? You actually want to ask me and then? I want to ask you and then? You saw Wang Wu and then? Why didn't you kill her immediately?" Senior Immortal Paksu took a deep breath and then calmly said, "Because she is the most ideal collection that I said. And this time, she took the initiative to find me and frankly said that she was willing to accept my transformation and become the most perfect and delicate collection in the world." Xia Xiaohe was stunned for a long time and said, "She said that and you believe it?" Senior Immortal Paksu said, "Why not? Use your brain a little bit and think about it. Who would throw themselves into the trap to be your collection?" Senior Immortal Paksu's eyes were burning and he refused to give it an inch. He said, "If she is the fated person in my life, then she will understand my art of collection and will be willing to become my collection. You're really incorrigible. I don't need others to save me. Your Royal Highness, please don't intervene in this matter." Xia Xiaohe stared at Senior Immortal Paksu. After a long time, she suppressed her anger and said, "Paksu, for the sake of our many years of friendship, I remind you that the identity of that Wang Wu is very suspicious. Now there is a Wang Wu and Yen Luo fighting in the passage. Think about it carefully. Who is the Wang Wu you met? Don't play with fire on impulse. I know whether it's suspicious or not." Senior Immortal Paksu said in a cold voice, "I don't care how many Wang Wu there are in the passage. There is only one Wang Wu I want, and that is the one who takes the initiative to find me and can understand my art of collection." "You're just deceiving yourself. People with different goals cannot make plans together. For the sake of our many years of friendship. Your Royal Highness, I'll take my leave first." "Where are you going?" Xia Xiaohe's figure moved and stopped in front of Paksu. Paksu didn't retreat even half a step and said, "To finish the work that should have been done long ago. Wang Wu is still waiting for me, and I have been delayed by you for too long." Xia Xiaohe said angrily, "At this time, you want to abandon the great cause of the immortal world and play with your woman? If you're not satisfied, go to the immortal king to complain about me. I don't care. Wait." Xia Xiaohe grabbed Paksu's wrist so that he couldn't launch his immortal technique. "Paksu, I think you've been confused by that woman's honeyed words to the point that you're in a delirious state." Before her voice fell, Xia Xiaohe felt a burning pain in her palm. An immortal fire was ignited on Paksu's wrist. "Your Royal Highness, please don't force me." Xia Xiaohe gritted her teeth and finally loosened her hand. "Paksu, you will regret it." "I never regret what I do." Paksu said and cupped his hands to Xia Xiaohe. "Thank you for your help, princess." "Get lost." Paksu smiled, took a step forward and was about to leave. However, at this moment, a space crack suddenly opened not far away, and two familiar figures came out of it. The one in the front had a foxy face and several long tails behind her. It was the nine-tailed fox who had just restored her original body. The woman behind the fox had an indifferent expression and was dressed in snow-white clothes. She was Wang Wu. After crossing the space passage, the fox saw Xia Xiaohe, so she happily said, "Yo, Your Royal Highness, I've brought the person you want." Then her voice stopped abruptly. At this time, the fox girl had already seen Senior Immortal Paksu, who was half a step away, and then smiled awkwardly and guiltily. "Oh, did I come too early? I didn't calculate the time well, I'm really sorry." Then, with a roll of her long tails, she disappeared without a trace. Paksu didn't care about the fox girl and didn't even look at Wang Wu. Instead, he looked at Xia Xiaohe with a cold face. "Your Royal Highness, what do you want to do? Bribing the people around me and taking Wang Wu here when I was unprepared? Is this the purpose of you summoning me here?" Xia Xiaohe's two willowy eyebrows had been entangled into a ball. "Paksu, shut up and use your brain. In this situation you should be able to see that it's all led by someone. Yes, isn't everything under your control?" Xia Xiaohe still calmed down and said, "If I'm really in charge of all this, I will never let you find this flaw." Paksu, however, didn't buy it and said, "If you can do everything without flaws, you won't let me see this scene. Seeing this scene, it just shows that your control of the situation is not perfect." Xia Xiaohe took a deep breath again and inwardly scolded this guy for being smart when he shouldn't be. However, the real cause of all this was undoubtedly Wang Wu. No, I'm afraid she was not the real Wang Wu. Although that woman was powerful, she was not known for this kind of calculation. In today's 9 regions, the only person who could have this calculation and execution ability at the same time was probably Thinking of this, Xia Xiaohe suddenly turned her head and saw Wang Wu sticking out her tongue at her with a treacherous smile on her face. Sure enough, it's you. Xia Xiaohe glanced at Senior Immortal Paksu and knew that she had to make a decision now. And her decision was very simple. After a simple bell sound, a sword light shot out from between her eyebrows and went straight to Wang Wu. The moment the sword light shone, the world dimmed and endless pressure descended on 9 regions. Senior Immortal Paksu was the closest. When he saw the sword light, his mind was greatly shocked. Xinyuan sword? An innate treasure, one of the top 3 peerless divine weapons in the immortal world, was actually in the hands of Xia Xiaohe. No, it was not the main body of Xinyuan sword, but the projection given to her by the immortal king Xiaoyu. However, even if it was just a projection, it was still the projection of an innate treasure. No creature in the lower realm could resist the power of Xinyuan sword. After this sword strike, no matter how strong Wang Wu's non-phase sword defense was, she would die without a doubt. At this moment he saw the heavy body of Xinyuan's sword, Xia Xiaohe's determined eyes, and at the same time Wang Wu's indifferent face. In an instant, countless thoughts turned in Senior Immortal Paksu's mind. However, before he could sort out these thoughts, his body had already moved. He came to the front of Wang Wu at a lightning speed. The next moment, the sword light penetrated his body, and a simple and square bronze sword was inserted in his heart. However, in the end it stopped. His tyrannical strength, which was firmly in the top 3 among the senior immortals, allowed him to stop the projection of Xinyuan's sword in a hurry. However, after this sword strike, Senior Immortal Paksu was also like a dried-up oil lamp. Paksu? Xia Xiaohe looked at Senior Immortal Paksu in disbelief and said, "Are you crazy?" "No, of course I'm not crazy, so, come down with me, Xiaohe." Paksu's 7 orifices were overflowing with blood. He laughed wildly and pointed at Xia Xiaohe. At this time, his vitality was cut off, but he could still mobilize the surging immortal spirit power in his body, gather them together, and form a great immortal technique. Broken Immortal King. The immortal technique was silent and invisible, but there was a hole in Xia Xiaohe's chest that could never be healed. Her heart and her jade mansion were all turned into nothingness under the bombardment of the Broken Immortal King. Chapter 803. The fight between the 2 immortals was like the rise of a hare and the fall of a falcon. In the blink of an eye, Xinyuan's sword and Broken Immortal King, these great immortal techniques that were rarely seen in 9 regions in 10,000 years, were used one after another. The 2 of them were hit at the same time and suffered fatal injuries. It seemed that the outcome was already decided. Wang Wu, who watched the whole process from the side, was amazed. This plot. I really lost. No matter how she deduced it before, she could not deduce such a surprising development. The 2 immortals actually fought each other without saying a word, and they even tried to kill each other. Were the 2 of them childhood sweethearts or absolutely irreconcilable enemies? Even the most optimistic expectation did not think that it would be so easy to trigger a war between the 2 immortals. The previous arrangements that could cause the 2 of them to appear to be in harmony but actually at odds with each other was already an excellent result. According to the original arrangement, after following Senior Immortal Paksu to this place, which aroused Paksu's strong suspicion of Xia Xiaohe, she should immediately leave, pretend to be hidden by Xia Xiaohe, and then further alienate the relationship between the 2. But now, it seemed that there was no need to be in such a hurry to leave, because the next change must be followed up as soon as possible. Wang Wu slightly lowered her shoulders, shifted her center of gravity and put on a fighting posture. The 9-tailed celestial fox stood quietly behind her, rolling her eyes. On the other side, Xia Xiaohe lowered her head and stared at the hole in her chest. Her expression was neither happy nor sad. After a long time, amidst Paksu's occasional coughs, she softly asked, "Broken Immortal King?" As the name implied, the target of this move, Broken Immortal King, was completely aimed at the king of the immortal world. Its power was so powerful that it could break through the defense of the princess of the immortal world in a hurry. It indeed had the capital to threaten the immortal king. However, the Broken Immortal King had such a powerful destructive power that it had clearly destroyed Xia Xiaohe's vital points, but she still stood in the same place and could still speak as if she was not affected at all. Paksu coughed up a mouthful of blood and said with a smile, "Yes, I specially designed this move for Xiaoyu, but it's worth it to use it on you. It's really an eye-opener that I can't kill you like this, Your Royal Highness. In return I'll show my skill." While speaking, Paksu suddenly opened his mouth, and blood gushed out of his throat like a waterfall. The amount of blood was so huge that it seemed as if his whole person had been hollowed out. His body shrank at a very fast speed and soon became a mummy. At the same time, a strong death energy began to gush out of Paksu's body. Senior Immortal Paksu's flesh and blood began to fall off, and his internal organs began to corrode, revealing pale bones. After a while he became a tall and burly skeleton. The Shenyuan sword cut off the vitality, but Paksu had the means to turn the dead into life. He had forcefully extended his life. Xia Xiaohe was not surprised at all. With an immortal king as an imaginary enemy, if there was a broken immortal king, there would naturally be a way to deal with the Shenyuan sword. But what? Xia Xiaohe quietly watched Paksu complete the transformation from death and then asked, "This is your choice? For an inexplicable collectible, for an obvious fake?" Senior Immortal Paksu sneered and said, "Fake? Do you know what is true and what is false? Don't always use your standards to ask the world, Your Royal Highness. Your Xia family is always so self-righteous, which is really disgusting." As he spoke, a black tide that blotted out the sky swept towards Xia Xiaohe. The black tide was filled with terrifying and vicious curses. Compared with the black tide that used to ravage the Blue River region, it was as pure as water. Xia Xiaohe didn't say a word and let the black tide swallow her. After a long time in the black tide, her voice was clear and distinguishable, as if it was close to his ears. "Do you really know who she is?" "I don't need to know who she is at all. I just need to know that she is the only confidant who can understand my art of collection." "Understand your art?" "Yes, no matter what her purpose in approaching me is, no matter whether she really agrees with my idea or not, to be able to say those words at that time, I know that she really knows the ropes." At the same time, facing the inexplicable gaze of the nine-tailed fox, Wang Wu shrugged her shoulders and explained, "As a top student, it's inevitable that I know a little bit of miscellaneous knowledge. However, it's just an academic discussion. Don't take me as a real pervert." On the other side, Xia Xiaohe ignored Paksu's explanation. "Then, for her, you would rather abandon the immortal world and me?" The next moment, the black tide suddenly collapsed inward, and the endless darkness was gathered into a walnut-sized ball, which rotated in the palm of Xia Xiaohe's hand. Xia Xiaohe's face also became ferocious and strange. "Paksu, you really let me down." "Disappointed? It's not your turn to say that. It's me who should be disappointed. Whether you agree with Wang Wu or not, I have told you clearly before that she is my most cherished collection and will be the proudest work in my life. And what did you do? Have you ever considered my thoughts before you took out the Shenyuan sword? Have you ever discussed it with me, not even once? Your sword was resolute. Even after I was seriously injured, you refused to take back the Shenyuan sword and still wanted to kill Wang Wu. What do you think I am? A plaything that you can do whatever you want? You want me to do whatever you want me to do, but after that, you still have to put on a face that everything is for my own good. I don't need your hypocrisy." When Xia Xiaohe heard this, she sneered and said, "So, you really have been holding a grudge for a long time, and this matter is just a fuse. Xiaoyao has always said that you are naturally rebellious, and it's indeed not wrong. I've been wrong to believe you all these years. Today let me correct this mistake with my own hands." After that, the black ball in her palm was hit by her. The speed was as fast as lightning and it went straight through Paksu's skull. However, Paksu's ferocious laughter came faintly from a very far away place. "Ha, I've been waiting for this day for a long time. I can't kill your father, but it's enough to kill you. You can withstand my broken immortal king. I'm afraid that old fart Xiaoyu gave you all the 36 puppet insects. And I'd like to see if you have the other 36 puppet insects." As he spoke, the wind and clouds surged, and the surrounding spiritual energy gathered at an astonishing speed. Even the law of the great path in this place was quickly attached to it. The first broken immortal king was done in a hurry, but the second time, it could be operated with all its strength. Its power was so strong that it made the world tremble. Xia Xiaohe, on the other hand, just silently raised the Shenyuan sword, placed the sword horizontally in front of her chest, and stared at the face reflected on the sword without saying a word. When Xia Xiaohe stagnated, Senior Immortal Paksu did his best to push the second broken immortal king to the peak. At this point, all the changes between heaven and earth disappeared, and the clouds that covered the sky and the sun dispersed. The spring sunshine was beautiful, the river was clear, and the sea was calm. Because all the energy was concentrated in the control of Senior Immortal Paksu, not a trace of it would leak out, so it would not cause any change in the environment. "Your Royal Highness, farewell forever." The next moment, the broken immortal king attacked with all his strength. Xia Xiaohe sighed and said, "Farewell forever, Paksu." Then, from top to bottom, the Shenyuan sword drew a bright straight line, which divided the sky and the earth into the left and right sides. Between heaven and earth, Senior Immortal Paksu showed a relieved expression. Sure enough, it's you, this old fart. Then, Senior Immortal Paksu disappeared quietly, and even the broken Immortal King that had been released disappeared. Only the line drawn by the Shenyuan sword remained between heaven and earth for a long time, and then gradually disappeared. After this sword, Xia Xiaohe quietly closed her eyes for a moment, and then raised the Shenyuan sword again and pointed it at Wang Wu and the nine-tailed fox. Next, it's your turn. Wang Wu's heart turned cold, knowing that she would face a severe test next. After all, sitting on top of the mountain and watching the tigers fight could not solve all the problems. As a result of the war between the immortals, the possibility of both sides suffering losses was only the smallest. The greater possibility was to leave behind a seriously injured winner. And even if the winner was seriously injured, he still had a tyrannical strength that was difficult to contend with head-on. However, there was nothing to complain about this result. Paksu was dead and Xia Xiaohe was seriously injured. It could be said that most of the biggest crisis in 9 regions had been resolved. Next. The woman in white snorted softly, and her figure began to expand rapidly. In the blink of an eye, she turned into a burly giant with a height of more than 3,000 meters. The real culprit, Wang Lu, finally showed his true face. Come on, let me see the means of the princess of the immortal world. See my ass, why don't you run away? The voice of Senior Immortal Paksu suddenly exploded in Wang Lu's ears. The next moment, a space channel opened under the feet of the giant divine weapon and pulled it in. After the fall of the giant divine weapon, a thin silver line appeared in its original place. Xia Xiaohe's sword missed, so she regretfully looked at the place where the giant divine weapon disappeared. She shook her head, silently withdrew the Shenyuan sword, and then her whole body collapsed like debris. On the other side, Wang Lu, who fell from the space channel, found himself standing in the mountain where Senior Immortal Paksu had previously used as a stronghold. The shadow of a skeleton loomed in front of him. Senior Immortal Paksu? Regarding this fallen immortal, Wang Lu's feelings were really complicated. On the one hand, the two sides were hostile and could be said to be enemies of life and death. On the other hand, he really helped him solve a lot of troubles. In the end, it could even be said that he saved his life. Xia Xiaohe's last sword strike, Wang Lu was not sure that he could take it. Hey, sure enough, it's you. The shadow of the skeleton looked up and down at Wang Lu and said, I knew it wouldn't be that tasteless woman. Wang Lu was silent for a while and said, What do you want? With Wang Lu's eyesight, he could see that Paksu was in the final radiance of a setting sun at this time. He was able to survive under the Shenyuan sword and help him escape. He had already overdrawn himself too much, and his soul was not far from dissipating. Paksu smiled and said, I do have something to ask of you. Help me avenge Xia Xiaohe. Wang Lu frowned. Xia Xiaohe was clearly seriously injured by you, yet you want me to avenge her? That's not the real Xia Xiaohe. The Xia Xiaohe you see is just a clone of Xiaoyu. Xiaoyu's clone? The real Xia Xiaohe will not mention the Shenyuan sword to you when she knows that I want to protect you. Although she is Xiaoyu's daughter, she is not as inhuman as Xiaoyu. However, she probably died a long time ago. Xiaoyu's lifespan has long been exhausted. In order to prolong his life, he almost refined all his children. Xia Xiaohe is his only remaining daughter, but it seems that it's just his camouflage. So, the immortal king has already descended to the lower realm? Hey, the immortal world is almost finished. 9 regions is a place that we must pass to survive. We can't lose it at all. How could Xiaoyu not come in person? However, after eating my broken immortal king, I'm afraid he can't stay in this world anymore, so you don't have to worry about confronting Xiaoyu too early. It's a pity that I used the broken immortal king too hastily. Using immortal method against the immortal king, only the first time has the best effect. The second time, although my momentum was great, he had already seen through the mystery. Unfortunately, I have worked hard to prepare this immortal method for 5,000 years. Wang Lu was silent. Finally, there's one more thing I want to ask of you. Speak. Can you let me train you a little? I'm a fucking man. I don't even care who you are, so of course I don't care about your gender. For the sake of saving your life and getting rid of a big evil for you, please satisfy my little wish before I die. Chapter 804. On the wasteland, Wang Lu and the nine-tailed fox walked one after the other. The fox, who was known for her cunning and quick-wittedness, obediently followed 2 positions behind Wang Lu. Her every move was respectful. It was just that this well-behaved posture didn't last long. Because of boredom, the fox girl relaxed. Her footsteps began to jump and her eyes were full of curiosity as she looked around. Before long, the fox girl simply bounced around Wang Lu in a circle, asking him questions while circling around him. Where are we going? Right now, the situation in 9 regions should be very critical. Is it okay to take a slow walk like this? Seeing that Wang Lu ignored her, the fox girl pouted her mouth slightly, snorted, and ran a little farther away to tease a little monster in the wasteland who poked its head out curiously. After a while, the fox girl looked back at Wang Lu. Seeing that he was in a trance, she stood on tiptoe. As a result, the next moment, 2 cold eyes were cast on her, which made her footsteps suddenly freeze. The 9-tailed fox helplessly returned to Wang Lu's side and continued to accompany him in his boredom. After a long time, the fox girl couldn't bear the loneliness and took the initiative to find a topic. Speaking of which, you were really cunning just now. Wang Lu glanced at the fox girl. I'm seriously praising you. The word cunning is a first-class commendatory word for us heavenly foxes. If it were me, I wouldn't dare to refuse that kind of request made by that perverted Poxu before he died. The old perverted Poxu's fierce reputation in the immortal world is very frightening. He is temperamental and can turn hostile at will. You can see that even his childhood sweetheart Xia Xiaohe's chest was dug out by him. If you dare to refuse him, he might use his own death to put a curse on you. However, if I were to be trained by that guy, I would feel that my life would be worse than death. So, I'm very convinced that you can successfully turn the tables in that situation. Wang Lu didn't want to talk about that topic. He just coldly snorted and warned her to shut up. However, once the curiosity of the 9-tailed fox was raised, it was difficult to calm down. The fox girl giggled recklessly, and then suddenly put her hands on her hips and imitated the tone of Wang Lu's speech at that time and said, Senior Immortal Poxu, I can promise you to train her, but the specific method has to be changed. Then the fox girl turned around and imitated Senior Immortal Poxu. How do you want to change it? I can train you, but our positions have to be switched. I'll be the one training you. What did you say? Immortal Venerable, you've been trained your entire life and have countless exquisite and brilliant collections, but you've never been trained by anyone before, right? That's right. Aren't you curious about what it feels like to be taught a lesson? I guess you must have been curious before, Immortal Venerable, but you have never met a trainer that you are willing to devote yourself to. But I'm different. I know what I'm doing. Although I don't agree with some of your ideals, I can at least understand you. Senior Immortal will not live long. With your current physical condition, I'm afraid that even if you try your best, you are doomed to be unable to complete the perfect training and transformation. In that case, why don't you let go of this obsession and have a new experience at the last moment of your life? Are you really willing to do this to me? Senior Immortal has eliminated a strong enemy in 9 regions and saved the common people. As the number 1 person in 9 regions, I have the obligation and am willing to send you on your last journey. With a solemn look on her face, the fox girl imitated Wang Lu's demeanor at that time vividly. Then, she flicked her backhand into the big furry tail behind her and took out a shiny black whip as well as several candles of different thickness. With a smile on her face, the fox girl waved the whip and said, Senior Immortal, let's get started. Seeing this, Wang Lu finally couldn't bear it anymore and said, Wait a minute. I don't remember this scene just now. And where did you get the whip and the candles from? Seeing that Wang Lu was finally willing to talk to her, the fox girl giggled, threw the whip and the candles in her hand aside, and then hopped over and said, I didn't see the end, so I could only imagine it myself. Later, you and Senior Immortal Poxu went somewhere and did this and that. I was waiting anxiously. You don't need to know what you shouldn't know. Wang Lu's face was gloomy, and he didn't want to mention a word about what happened at that time. Although it was much better to be a trainer than to be trained, it was not a history worth showing off. Don't be so cold. Tell me what you did with him. I'm really curious. How about you tell me and I warm your bed? Wang Lu sneered and said, Enough, fox girl. Do you think I will let you go just because you jest like this? You don't really want to kill me, do you? The 9-tailed fox immediately put on a pitiful look and said, I don't want to. At that time, I was also forced by Poxa to do something to Feng Yin, and I really didn't kill him. He's still alive and well. You know what I'm talking about? Are you talking about Feng Ling? The 9-tailed fox finally couldn't laugh. Do you want me to return to the appearance of Feng Ling? Wang Lu didn't speak, but turned around and looked at her seriously. It's not impossible to restore to Feng Ling. I still retain her memory and personality, but that means death for me. As the fox girl spoke, her 9 furry tails spread out into a fan, and each tail was surrounded by an astonishing amount of energy. I don't want to die. No matter who it is, no matter what the reason is, I don't want to die. If you want me to die, then come and kill me with your own hands. Wang Lu didn't make his move. Of course he could kill her. Although the 9-tailed fox was an immortal beast, Wang Lu was now the #1 person in 9 regions who was strong enough to face the fallen immortal head-on. It would be easy for him to kill her. And the sealing spell that Feng Yin Taoist master used at great cost could also be easily reproduced by him. However, Wang Lu still didn't make his move, because someone was stopping him. In Wang Lu's eyes, inside the body of the 9-tailed fox, there was a small figure of a girl, who was shaking her head vigorously at him, indicating that she couldn't. You don't want me to kill her? Because she's a good person? Are you retarded? You insist? Feng Ling, this is the first time I know that you are so soft-hearted. This is related to your life, so don't act like a Virgin Mary at this time, okay? Damn it, can't you be reasonable? What do you mean by I have to think of a way to get the best of both worlds? Do you think of me as a universal wishing machine? Yes, I have created a lot of miracles, but things that I can't do are things that I can't do. You and her soul and body are one, so there's no way to separate them. Otherwise, do you think I can't think of a way to use a blank body puppet to inject the soul? You say, wait until the technology is developed to the point where it can be separated? Who knows that it will take tens of thousands of years? The blue leopard cat from the future that I told you in the past is a fairy tale, not a historical record. In an instant, Wang Lu had a long conversation with the small voice in the fox girl's body. However, he still couldn't convince the other party. Feng Ling was unusually unreasonable on this matter. And Wang Lu didn't intend to forcibly disobey her wishes. Feng Ling's temperament was different from that of other people. She was very unyielding. If he really angered her, he might as well ignore her. Very well, whatever you want. Finally, Wang Lu gave up the idea of persuading Feng Ling. He disconnected the connection and then looked up at the 9-tailed fox. You're indeed a fox. You're really cunning. After the fox was awakened by Paksu, she didn't rush to crush Feng Ling, who occupied her for 100 years. Instead, she preserved her memory and personality independently, which was obviously a backup plan for herself. In addition, Feng Ling's strange insistence was certainly influenced by the fox. Most likely, she had quietly communicated with Feng Ling before and persuaded Feng Ling to save her life with flowery words. This was not difficult. Feng Ling had a stubborn temperament, but she was essentially a kind-hearted girl. It was normal for her to be deceived by the fox. But what was really rare was that all this happened during the time when the fox followed Senior Immortal Paksu. She had been preparing for 2 things from the beginning, and this second preparation really worked and saved her life. This was really cunning. The 9-tailed fox giggled and then said, "Thank you for not killing me. In return, I will stand on your side and help you with all my strength in the next battle." Nonsense, you betrayed the immortal world and have been on the same line as us for a long time. Why don't you try your best? Don't put it so bluntly. In short, what do you want me to do next? After a moment of contemplation, Wang Lu was about to speak when his body suddenly shook and he raised his head to look into the distance. It's really troublesome. She actually chose this time. But it's also good. Fox, I have something to ask of you. Go to Area 51, take 2 teams of Zaku, and then go straight to Heavenly Sage Hall of the Zhongzhou Wanxian League and beat up all the people who are quarreling there. The 9-tailed fox blinked her eyes and said, Everyone, as long as you see someone who dares to talk nonsense, just do it directly. If someone resists by force, I allow you to kill them on the spot. Even if the other party is Supreme Hichu? Even if it's the Elder of Heavenly Sword Hall. Those who dare to add oil to the fire at this time will all be dealt with quickly. When it came to the last sentence, Wang Lu's anger was obvious. Just after receiving the news, when Wang Wu was lost in the crack in the sky and Tetragon brought people to the emergency rescue, the internal strife between the Wanxian League and Dixian broke out in Xingjing sect in Zhongzhou. A group of idiots completely ignored the seriousness of the current situation and scolded each other in the Heavenly Sage Hall. What was even more shameful was that they didn't even block the good news, letting the world know about their internal strife, which made their morale shaky. I didn't have time to deal with it for a while, but it actually became like this. In the past 15 years, I have indeed killed too few people. The 9-tailed fox wagged her tail and said, However, now that 9 regions is weaker than the immortal world, isn't it not good to do it to our own people at this time? Wang Lu coldly said, At this time, internal strife is not worthy of being one of us. Aha, that's straightforward. But you don't do it yourself but entrust me to do it. Do you really trust me? I trust your cunning. Wang Lu lightly said, a cunning fox should know what to do now. Chapter 805. Wang Lu sent the nine-tailed fox to the central region to suppress the internal strife and riots because of two considerations. First, he himself had other arrangements. The situation in the front line of the crack in the sky was already precarious. Since Wang Wu lost contact, Tetragon led a group of Dixian to the scene as soon as possible and formed a solid line of defense. This was an emergency strategy that had been set long ago. However, the so-called emergency naturally could not last long. Tetragon's line of defense persisted for a period of time, and then crumbled under the endless impact of the servant army. Once the line of defense was broken, the situation in 9 regions would be extremely critical. At this time, the only one who was qualified to go to the front line to support and turn the tide was Wang Lu. Second, the work in Heavenly Sage Hall was dirty work. If possible, Wang Lu didn't want to do it himself. Cleaning up the situation by ruthless means meant that it was inevitable to cause killing. And those who could speak in Heavenly Sage Hall were all important members of some large sects and organizations. As the number 1 person in 9 regions, Wang Lu didn't want to be alone so early. The war with the fallen immortal was a long-term war, and there were many future jobs that depended on his personal reputation. It was not worthwhile to turn into a tyrant too early. Fox, prove the value of your existence to me. After explaining the last sentence, Wang Lu walked in the wasteland for a while, combing through the next part of the overall plan. After confirming that it was correct, he suddenly stamped his foot on the ground, causing the land within 100 miles of the wasteland to crack and soften. Then, borrowing the recoil force, he soared into the sky. The wind in the astral wind layer was like a knife. The higher the altitude, the sharper the wind blade. Wang Lu went all the way up into the astral wind layer. It was not until the ground under his feet had become dark and invisible, and the friction between the astral wind and his body began to produce incandescent heat that he finally stopped his momentum. Wang Lu tried to exhale lightly, but found that the wind that swept around him formed a great pressure that he could not even exhale a breath. Thankfully, his synchronization rate with the Colossus had reached a certain level, allowing him to boast the indestructible feature of the Colossus. Otherwise, he would have been blown apart immediately. In the past few hundred years, no one had reached such heights. Therefore, no one would be able to charge down from such a great height and accumulate an endless amount of impact force. Wang Lu turned his body in the astral wind layer, head down and feet up. Then he fell down like a meteor with irresistible force. Nothing could stop him. Along the way, Wang Lu guided the violent astral wind. Like a traveler who had found a guide, the wind whistled behind Wang Lu. Not long after, there were hundreds of millions of blades made of wind behind Wang Lu, like an army of a king. Wang Lu fell faster and faster. Very soon, he broke through the darkness of the astral wind layer, pierced through the thick clouds, and saw the ugly scar that was torn in midair above the vast blue river region. It was the scar of the sky. He saw the army of servant soldiers descending from the immortal realm. He saw Tetragon fighting a bloody battle. At the same time, the battle in the scar of the sky was on the verge of collapse. From the moment Wang Wu fell into the enemy's hands, Senior Gem Emperor led the team to rush here as soon as possible. It was only a short period of half a day, but the line of defense had been in crisis several times. It was all because of the Earth Immortals who risked their lives and fought with their lives that they were finally able to repel those ferocious servant soldiers. The process was really unimaginably difficult. The Dixian people thought that since they had fought head-on with the Immortals of the Immortal Realm, it should be easy to resist the enemy who was mainly made up of servant soldiers. However, they soon found that the servant soldiers of different appearances had extremely strong combat power. Most of their individual strength was beyond the level of the Supreme of the Wanxian League, comparable to the Mahayana practitioners, and comparable to ordinary Dixian people. However, Tetragon's team only had 30 or 40 people, but the opponent was almost 10 times as many. These servant soldiers were driven by the Immortals to fight in all directions all year round, so they had a very tacit understanding with each other. On the other hand, the team brought by Tetragon was more or less a motley crew. Many of them were Dixian people with cultivation base but little actual combat experience. In the previous war they were logistics personnel. Now that 9 regions was short of manpower, they were forced to participate in the war. Their combat efficiency was completely incomparable to that of the servant soldiers of the Immortal Realm. Were it not for the fact that this battle took place at the end of the passage, where one man could hold the pass against 10,000 enemies, Tetragon and the others would not even be able to hold on for half a day. At this time, when they recalled that Wang Wu single-handedly blocked the army of the immortal realm here for several days, it was simply awe-inspiring. Unfortunately, before they had the time to revere Wang Wu, they were already unable to protect themselves. After countless tearing, a fatal loophole was finally torn open in the line of defense. Because Xuan Xian Lu Biechen, who presided over the array, used the immortal calculation too frequently, his immortal spirit was temporarily exhausted and his primordial spirit fainted. With him as the node, the network of 5 Dixian around him suddenly stagnated. Several pitch-black, snake-like beasts spotted the opening and immediately pounced over. The protective immortal technique that the Dixian hastily activated was broken by them and could not stop them at all. When Tetragon arrived, Lu Biechen's limbs and head had been bitten by those strange beasts. Then, with a sudden force, his body was immediately torn apart, and even his primordial spirit could not escape. Bichen? Tetragon's eyes turned red. However, before she could use her immortal technique to kill those black strange beasts, an invisible sword pierced her body from behind and came out from her chest. At the same time, several cold eyes suddenly opened in front of her, which made Tetragon's heart turn cold. Completely invisible assassins. A killing array that surrounded her from all sides. This was a trap specially designed for her, using Lu Biechen's death as bait to lure her from her mobile position, and then kill her with one blow. These invisible assassins should be one of the most elite few among the servant soldiers in the immortal world. Their ability to hide and burst far exceeded that of ordinary servant soldiers, and was not inferior to that of real immortals. If Tetragon was in her peak state, she might be able to contend with them. However, in the past 10 years she had devoted most of her energy to Wang Lu, and her own injuries had not fully healed, so her strength was only 70% to 80% of her peak state. The 20% to 30% difference was the key to whether she could get out of this dangerous situation or not. The stab on her back was extremely serious, and what was more fatal were the next few stab. She had no confidence that she could avoid any of them, and it seemed that she would definitely die. Around her, more companions rushed over in panic, trying to rescue Tetragon, but this only made Tetragon more desperate. It didn't matter if she died. She was in a mobile position in the team, not the core. Even if she died, as long as others held their positions, there would still be room for delay. But now the result would be total annihilation. However, at this moment Tetragon suddenly saw a light. A strong light came from above the sky, cutting through the clouds and the sky. The light was so dazzling, 100 times more blazing than the sun, that even Tetragon, the king of Dixian, had to squint her eyes and could only see the outline. The light was extremely fast, and in the blink of an eye, it came from the horizon, sweeping in front of Tetragon with endless heat. In just a moment, Tetragon felt that the hair in front of her forehead was burned. It was the long hair of immortals that would not change color even if it was soaked in lava, but now it was burned. Then she also saw countless streaks of blood in front of her eyes. The invisible assassins that surrounded her turned into countless pieces of meat without saying a word, and then were swept away by the high temperature and turned into smoke. The hundreds of servant soldiers who rushed out of the crack in the sky, along with the invisible assassins, were evaporated by the high temperature after being cut into thousands of pieces by the invisible sharp blades. The crisis that left the Dixian helpless was actually solved in an instant. The light didn't stop, it directly rushed into the inside of the crack in the sky. After that, people only felt that there was a blur in front of them, and then the ugly scar that hovered in the sky slowly disappeared. The passage from the immortal world to the 9 regions was directly dispersed by this light. After no one knew how long, cheers came from all directions. At first they were scattered, but soon they gathered. In addition to the earth immortals who were fighting fiercely in midair, there were also those cultivators who had been supplying the spiritual chi of heaven and earth to this place. All of them gathered and cheered for the unexpected victory. However, Tetragon couldn't laugh. That light was a strong light that was difficult for others to look directly at, but she vaguely saw a familiar figure. No, even if she couldn't see it, she would not mistake it for the familiar smell. It was Wang Lu. At this time, the only one who could reverse the situation in an instant with his own strength was Wang Lu. However, even though he managed to salvage the situation, he lost himself in the passageway. Was this also in his calculation? Unfortunately, before she could think about it, Tetragon was surrounded by happy people. People laughed and shouted around her, and the noise made it difficult for her to calm down and think. Not long after, a Dixian flew over with a livid face and said something in Tetragon's ear. The Heavenly Sage Hall was massacred, and a large number of cultivators of the Wanxian League died tragically. Chapter 806. Who else is not convinced? Who else thinks that you can bully the Dixian people? Please stand up and let us have a look at you as soon as possible. The corner of the nine-tailed fox's mouth hooked up, revealing a sarcastic smile. A pair of slightly red eyes scanned the surroundings, only to see countless drooping heads. This was the Heavenly Sage Hall, the highest authority of the Wanxian League in 9 regions. After thousands of years of operation, it was majestic and magnificent. Right now, the magnificent hall, which was known as the closest to fairyland in 9 regions, had been filled with a strong smell of blood. Hundreds of corpses lay scattered on the ground. The broken flesh and bones almost formed a thick blanket, which made the hall gloomy and terrifying. All of this was because of the arrival of a group of uninvited guests. A humanized 9-tailed fox and 12 inferior bodies of the giant divine weapons of different shapes openly went on a killing spree in the Heavenly Sage Hall, killing the opponents until the blood flowed like a river. In the face of the silence in the hall, the 9-tailed fox sighed in disappointment and said, "That's it? Weren't you guys very strong-willed just now? Some said that they wanted to teach us a lesson on behalf of Wang Lu. Some said that they wanted to take advantage of the situation to overthrow the rule of the tyrant Wang Lu, and return the 9 regions to peace and harmony. Some said that they wanted to uproot us and the Dixian people and suppress us forever. Why don't you say anything now?" Under a towering jade pillar in the hall, there was an old man with white hair and a ruddy face leaning on the pillar. There was a bloody wound on his chest, from which blood gurgled out, which could not be stopped. While gasping heavily, he pointed his trembling finger at the 9-tailed fox and said, "You guys, how dare you commit such a heinous crime in this sacred place? Even if you kill us all today, can you kill all the righteous people in the world? You colluded with the Dixian people and now..." The 9-tailed fox rolled her eyes, and then made a gesture with her slender hand behind her and said, "Luli, give him a quick death." As soon as her voice fell, a clear sword shadow flew out from the side of the fox girl and cut the old man and the jade pillar behind him into 2. The person who made the sword strike was Luli. She was the first pilot of the experimental machine in 9 regions. After more than 5 years of training and cultivation, at this time, the synchronization rate with the experimental machine had reached more than 90%, which was comparable to the tyrannical fighting power of the Dixian people. She was one of the best among the same batch of pilots. It was just that, after this sword strike, Luli hesitantly took a step back and put the immortal sword back into the scabbard. As the pilot of Xiagu, the first thing to do was to obey absolutely. Now that Wang Lu was not here and authorized the 9-tailed fox, even if her order was absurd and unruly, it must be strictly implemented. The fox girl smiled and glanced at Luli and said, "You've worked hard, you. You can of Lulu that you can you ja you but ja you can do you." The fox girl smiled and glanced at Luli and said, "You've worked hard. You can go back and rest now. You've worked hard today." Luli nodded gratefully and then, without saying much, left the Heavenly Sage Hall and the central region in the blink of an eye. She returned to the distant Area 51 of Blue River region, no longer caring about the dispute here. As soon as Luli left, someone immediately made an application. "I also want to withdraw, can I?" Zhou Mumu said unhappily, "Those who oppose, those who cause trouble, and those who threaten have all been killed by you. Now even if we're not here you can control the scene alone, right?" The fox girl rejected Zhou Mumu's request. "No, you have to stay here because the people who conspire against us have not been cleaned up, and the work has to continue." "Haven't been cleaned up? I say that's enough." Zhou Mumu was a bit annoyed and said, "Even if Wang Lu asked you to lead us to clean up the situation, aren't you going too far now?" "Too far?" The fox girl raised her eyebrows and looked at Zhou Mumu playfully. "Do you really think I'm going too far, or are you angry because of the high-level participation of your Kunlun immortal sect in this rebellion?" "Enough, I have nothing to say to you. Do what you want." The fox girl laughed and then looked around. Sure enough, she saw a lot of expectant eyes. The dispute between her and the test machine pilots was seen by everyone, and everyone was looking forward to the further outbreak of contradictions. Once they had an internal strife, the defeated soldiers in the hall would immediately counterattack. To be honest, the fox girl was looking forward to that scene because she could kill some more people and make the deterrent stronger. However, if she really killed too many people, she was afraid that things would not be good when Wang Lu came back. Therefore, the fox girl had to regretfully put down the idea and said in a clear voice, "You little rascals, give up the idea of getting lucky as soon as possible. Look around you, what kind of people are standing and lying down? They're nothing more than wandering characters. Which high-level members of the 5 major sects are here? None of the elders of the Heavenly Sword Hall of the Lingjian School are here. Even the senior deacons of the Spirit Pool Peak are not here. They only sent the newly promoted dead fatty Wen Bao here to deal with the errands. Only a few peripheral elders of Xingjing sect are here, while the people of 10,000 Art sect are purely here for sightseeing. And the group of upright madmen in Royal Soldier sect were also sick and absent from work. Except for a few ignorant old farts of Kunlun Immortal sect who came to stir the water, how many heavyweights are there in the Heavenly Sage Hall today? Looking at the gradually bewildered eyes around her, the nine-tailed fox sneered and then said, "A group of speculators, they think that their strength is strong enough to occupy the mainstream. They dare to use the precious friendship of the Wanxian League and Dixian as a stepping stone and wantonly hype. It's ridiculous that you can't see that the whole world is waiting to see how you die. Today I'm just doing it for someone else. If I don't do it, others will do it sooner or later." At this time, a seemingly simple and upright old cultivator frowned and said, "It's true that some people are a bit too extreme when dealing with Dixian, but don't you think it's too much for you to kill so many people indiscriminately?" The nine-tailed fox swayed her tail and said, "Too much? What's too much about cutting a tangled knot? If we don't kill all of these rascals today, there will be more people who will think that they have the advantage in numbers. If they group together to demonstrate, they can confuse right and wrong and pester endlessly. At that time, there will only be more people who need to be killed. The peaceful days have been too long. Even the threat of the fallen immortals is not taken seriously." A group of garbage-like things roared and gathered, pulled banners and shouted slogans, and said a few words of fairness and justice, and the righteousness of 9 regions. Unexpectedly, they could also get the support of people all the way to the Heavenly Sage Hall. In the past 15 years, when Wang Lu had no time to be distracted, the Heavenly Sage Hall has indeed gone a bit too far. Today, by washing it with flesh and blood, it can also be regarded as purification. The words of the nine-tailed fox were so vicious that the cultivators in the hall felt restless. There will be speculators at any time. This is an unavoidable evil in any political organization. The nine-tailed fox lightly said, "So, on the contrary, we must always keep an eye on the elimination of these speculators. Today I was entrusted by Wang Lu to prune the branches and cut the leaves for you. It seems that the speculators have been almost cleaned up. In the future, I hope you can solve these problems by yourself. Don't expect Wang Lu to save the situation every time. After all, it's an organization that has ruled the Wanxian League for so many years. Without Wang Lu, can't it even work?" The nine-tailed fox brought up the name of Wang Lu several times, and finally suppressed the last group of restless cultivators. No one in the Heavenly Sage Hall dared to have any strange thoughts. They only hoped that this killing god would leave as soon as possible. And the nine-tailed fox did not intend to stay for too long. It was enough for the task here to be completed to this point. If she continued to suppress it, it would easily have the opposite effect. She and the 12 experimental machines were indeed powerful, but if they were really attacked by a group of people, it was inevitable that they would be outnumbered. Just now, they were able to sweep the Saint Hall and kill more than 100 unknown cultivators because the real rulers of the Saint Hall acquiesced to all of this. That was all. As for what kind of political deal there was behind the scenes, it was not what the nine-tailed fox could care about. After all, she was just an agent of Wang Lu, so there was no need to be so deeply involved. Now that the problem was solved by the prestige of Wang Lu and the tyrannical fighting power of the 12 experimental machines, it was the right thing to withdraw as soon as possible. However, just as the nine-tailed fox was about to leave, suddenly a cultivator rushed in from the outside and shouted as soon as he entered the door. Not good. In order to save Taoist Master Non-Phase, Wang Lu rushed into the crack in the sky and disappeared with it. A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. Almost in an instant, there was a buzzing sound in the Heavenly Sage Hall, which was the voices of countless people gathered together. This news was so important that no one could ignore it. In order to save Wang Lu was lost in the crack in the sky? The crack in the sky was a passage that was forcibly opened by the immortal world to 9 regions. If the crack in the sky disappeared, it meant that the master and disciple were locked in the immortal world? It also meant that they were dead. And if Wang Lu died, what should they do next? At this moment, even the nine-tailed fox was stunned for a moment. But soon she found that she didn't need to worry about this problem, because someone stepped forward in time. It was Qianghua who made the move. A red light crossed the Saint Hall and directly pierced the forehead of the reporting cultivator. Then Qianghua coldly said, Deceiving people with lies is unforgivable. In an instant, there was a dead silence in the heavenly sage hall. Everyone's eyes were focused on Qianghua as if they were swords and spears. However, the woman was unmoved. She indifferently withdrew the kill immortal sword in her right hand and no longer paid attention to anyone. However, anyone with vision could see that her blow just now was like turning the tide and pulling the situation back from the brink of deterioration. Yes, perhaps Wang Lu had really been lost in the crack in the sky, or perhaps the passage had really disappeared. But so what? She was pointing a deer at a horse. Even if Wang Lu was really gone, the huge legacy left by him after 15 years of running 9 regions could still suppress all the thieves and thieves. The experimental machine in Area 5-1 was just one of them. Qianghua's sword strike reminded everyone in the most shocking way. You guys don't have the qualification to make trouble. Qianghua's synchronization rate was not the highest among this group of pilots, and it was even slightly inferior to Lu Li. Some people said that she had exhausted her talent, while others said that she had doubts about this synchronization mechanism. But in short, in the past few years, her performance in Area 51 was not outstanding. It was not until this moment that everyone realized that the lead disciple of Shengjing's sect was indeed worthy of her reputation. However, even if Qianghua's sword strike temporarily stabilized the situation, as long as Wang Lu did not appear, it would not solve the root cause. And at this time, what happened to Wang Lu? Chapter 807. In the passage between the two worlds, the long-lost master and disciple reunited. However, there was no touching kiss and tears, no affectionate look at each other and confide in each other. There was only an awkward atmosphere of looking at each other. The woman in white took the lead in launching an attack. She squinted her eyes, frowned and pouted her mouth. "Jeske, what are you doing here?" Wang Lu was shocked by this attitude and said, "Is this your attitude towards people who risk their lives to rescue you? Have you been ked silly by that Yenluo? What the hell, are you blind? Which eye of yours saw me being ked? I was the one who used the telepathic finger to play with that woman until she was and she almost became dead set on me. You still say that you haven't been ked silly? Tell me, where is that Yenluo who is dead set on you? Is she hiding behind you and working silently?" Wang Wu was so angry that her almond-shaped eyes widened and she angrily scolded, "You have eyes but no eyes, how dare you say that? If it weren't for you rushing over like a burnt egg, I would have pressed her under my body and ked her wantonly. Give me back my Yenluo." Seeing that Wang Wu was unusually arrogant, Wang Lu also became suspicious. Looking at her again, although her appearance was a little embarrassed and there were countless minor injuries on her body, her vital parts were still well protected. Although the fluctuation of magical power was weak, it was stable. If he opened his immortal eyes to take a closer look, so many king pills? Are you crazy? Have you designed the new version of non-phase method? Do you want to do this kind of overclocking thing? Wang Wu gave him an angry look and said, "What else? The 9 regions great array suddenly broke and you want me to fight the fallen immortals alone with the original king pill? Do you really want me to be pressed to the ground by that Yenluo? That's not necessarily impossible. Don't you always boast that your telepathic finger magical power is so great that even the true immortals in the upper realm can't escape your control? You can start from the bottom and then turn over little by little to become the master. Being trained by the overbearing immortal to be trained by the overbearing immortal, what a tragic and inspiring story. If you say so, why don't you try to pick on Xia Xiaohe and turn her into your exclusive property? Don't tell me you want to admit that the power of your spear is inferior to my finger?" When Wang Lu heard her mention Xia Xiaohe, his face suddenly became ugly. "Fortunately, I didn't think of this kind of crooked way. Otherwise I would be miserable." Xia Xiaohe was a soft and juicy girl, but her real body Xiaoyu was a withered old man. Wang Lu was still interested in soft girls, so the old man politely declined. "Wait, it seems like you've changed the topic. I haven't held you accountable for disturbing the prey. Damn it, if you hadn't recklessly rushed over, I would have succeeded." Wang Wu complained while honestly telling Wang Lu everything that happened before. In the beginning, Wang Wu relied on the support of the great array of 9 regions to counterattack. As a result, as soon as she entered the passage in the crack in the sky, her food supply was cut off, and she fell into danger in an instant. The conversation with Wang Lu was interrupted at that time. Her opponent was the true immortal Yenluo. Although she could not be ranked among the senior immortals in terms of fighting power alone, she was the deputy of senior immortal Xiaoyao. She ruled the army of servants in the immortal world. She was best at teamwork and seizing opportunities. Naturally, she would not miss this opportunity. She commanded her army of servants to cross the passage and raid 9 regions, while she herself, with the cooperation of her elite guards, quickly suppressed Wang Wu. However, Wang Wu made the right response in the first place. She brought out the beta version of non-phase method. Using this as the core, she connected most of the king pill that could be used at present and burst out with heaven-defying power in a short period of time. Yan Luo, who was originally prepared to take advantage of the situation, was suddenly passive. This unexpected change disrupted her overall calculation. She was surprised to find that although the opponent was just an outer path cultivator from the lower realm who lived in the 9 regions, she already had the strength to fight against the immortals head-on. No, she was even above them. With a combat power close to the level of senior immortal, she could suppress Yan Luo and the 3 guards by herself. This was the power that Wang Wu showed at that moment. Thus, Yan Luo immediately changed her strategy. She no longer tried to suppress Wang Wu, but to contain her, hold her back, and take this opportunity to let as many servant legions enter the 9 regions as possible. She tried to distract Wang Wu in this way. As a result, Wang Wu was indeed a bit distracted. She was constantly injured and in a precarious situation. This convinced Yan Luo that she had chosen the right strategy. Wang Wu was indeed the indispensable guardian of the 9 regions. Thus, she accelerated the speed of the servant soldiers entering the 9 regions, trying to further contain Wang Wu. Then, when most of the servant soldiers in the passage had left Yan Luo's side, Wang Wu immediately changed her face. She very indifferently let the servant soldiers rush to the exit of the passage, and her eyes never turned back. His bewildered demeanor from before was nowhere to be found. At this time, Yan Luo naturally knew that she had been fooled and wanted to call back the servant soldiers. However, the servant soldiers were blocked by a non-phase sword defense and could not come back. Then, everyone found that Wang Wu actually occupied the narrowest point in the passage at this time, and the special terrain was too suitable for the non-phase sword defense. While easily blocking the servant soldiers, she began to suppress Yan Luo with all her strength. After all, Yan Luo's single combat power was inferior, so she soon fell into a disadvantageous position. She was even controlled by Wang Wu for a time and experienced the wonderful taste of the telepathic finger, until Wang Lu turned into a meteor and went straight in from the 9th heaven. Wang Lu's scamper swept away all the ghosts and demons, and also broke the cage set up by Wang Wu, so that Yan Luo had a chance to escape from her control. After listening to all this, Wang Lu really had nothing to say. It turned out that his painstaking efforts, even at the cost of his origin, to rescue her, turned out to be a wrong move. Logically speaking, Wang Lu's judgment at that time was not wrong. With the strength of Wang Wu in her normal state, it was impossible for her to fight against an immortal head-on. The explosion of the beta version of the non-phase method was more or less luck. But because of this, Wang Wu's failure seemed to be even more regrettable. In short, it's good that you're okay. After thinking about it, Wang Lu could only use this sentence as the result of the dispute between the two. Then he took a step forward and hugged the other party tightly. The woman in his arms struggled a little and questioned with some dissatisfaction, "Do you want to fool me in this way?" Wang Lu thought about it. Indeed, he was too insincere, so he slightly changed his strategy. In addition to the hug, he also gave her a deep kiss. The other party did not refuse. After a long time, their lips parted. Wang Wu looked at the large scorch marks and scars caused by the friction of the astral wind on Wang Lu's body, and sighed softly, "You are simply unreasonable. You ruined my good thing, and yet you still have the face to take advantage of me?" Wang Lu thought about it again. Since hugging and kissing couldn't solve the problem, he could only do it for real. It just so happened that she also mentioned the comparison between the telepathic finger and a certain godly spear, so he might as well take this opportunity to practice it. F***ck, your brain must have been fried, right? Do you still have the mind to untie my belt at this time? Haven't you been squeezed by Tetragon enough in the past few years? Wang Wu looked at the hand that popped into her arms and waist. She was shocked by the low limit of the man in front of her. "Little Lu, I'm so moved. You have finally surpassed your master. From now on, the low limit of 9 regions will be handed over to you. But, seriously, aren't you too ambitious to do things in such a place? Yan Luo is not dead yet." Wang Lu smiled and said, "It doesn't matter if she's dead or not. I'm here." Would she dare to look back? But this is really not the place to do things. Let's go back to 9 regions first. Before he finished speaking, he couldn't go on. because he had already sensed that the exit of the passage behind him had disappeared. The next moment, in the depths of the passage ahead, a woman with a light figure slowly appeared. The red gem on her forehead was particularly eye-catching. Yanluo? Wang Wu immediately became vigilant. Regardless of her disheveled clothes, she had already stood in front of Wang Lu and put on a fighting posture. Although what Wang Lu said just now was very nice, anyone could see that he had paid an astonishing price for diving down from the ninth heaven. At least in a short period of time, he should not be involved in the battle again. Therefore, although it would certainly hurt someone's face, Wang Wu still firmly stood in front of Wang Lu. Yanluo was not an easy enemy to deal with. Her fighting power was not strong, but her means were too many. If it weren't for the beta version of the non-phase method that disrupted her strategy, Wang Wu didn't think she could defeat her. Therefore, Yanluo standing here at this time must mean that there was a great difficulty behind her. If there was really any trouble, then let her taste it first. Everything was just like the catastrophe more than 100 years ago, except that the positions of the two sides were finally reversed. Don't be so nervous. I have no intention of fighting with you. Yanluo's voice was very soft, which was a bit more lazy and relaxed than when she commanded the army. Moreover, there is no need for us to fight at all because we are doomed to die together. This passage has been cut off by me and has become a fragment floating in the endless void. Without the support of the upper and lower realms, it is only a matter of time before it dies. In that case, why don't we put down each other's position and hatred and coexist peacefully in the last moment of our lives? Wang Wu coldly said, since it's the last moment, why put on the false coat of peace? Isn't it better to choose a more indulgent way? Yanluo said with a smile, sure, whether it's telepathic finger or something else, you can use it if you want. You can also kill me. In any case, the final result is the same. Wang Wu was silent, trying to guess how much of the other party's words were true. What I said is true. I'm afraid there won't be a second chance for the two strongest people in 9 regions to perish together with me. I will never miss it. So, I really want to thank Wang Lu. Wang Wu's eyes became sharp and said, very well, then I'll do as you wish and let your death be a bit more worthwhile. However, before she could make a move, she was pressed by Wang Lu on the shoulder. Wait a minute, I think we might as well consider her suggestion. Since it's the last moment of life, let's spend it peacefully. With that, Wang Lu turned his head and gave Yanluo a sincere and brilliant smile. Chapter 808. I'm glad you think so. Let's get along well in the future. Yanluo showed a relaxed smile, nodded to the two people opposite her, and then turned to leave. Wait a minute, where are you going? Yanluo pointed to the darkness ahead and said, it's not far away. This passage has begun to disintegrate from both ends, so you don't have to worry about me going too far. But I think you two need to be alone now, so it's not convenient for me to disturb you. Wang Lu said, there's no need for that. I'm more interested in you now than her. Wang Wu coughed and said, saying these words in front of me, should I express some anger? Wang Lu ignored her and still stared at Yanluo's eyes and said, since there are only the 3 of us at the last moment of our lives, why should we distinguish each other so clearly? We should strengthen communication and enhance friendship. I just have a few questions to ask you. If it's about the secret of the immortal world, I'm afraid I can't give you the answer you want. Why should people care about confidentiality when they are about to die? Unless this passage is not as doomed as you said, and we still have the possibility of returning to 9 regions with the secret. When Yanluo heard this, she couldn't help but smile and said, think whatever you want. It's okay if you want to talk, but don't expect to get information from me. Wang Lu thought for a moment and said, okay, I won't get information from you. It's just a normal chat. Yanluo stood still and said, okay, what do you want to talk about? Wang Lu pointed to her chest and said, let's start with your 3 measurements. Before he finished speaking, Wang Wu's voice came from behind him, Cup, do you still need to ask? What about your professionalism? Wang Lu was really indignant at this malicious behavior. It was just a chat, why did she take it so seriously? Yanluo, on the other hand, covered her chest and said, she's right, and then? Wang Lu said, I want to say, although it's a little thin, your figure is still good. It's better than the little princess of your immortal world. When Xia Xiaohe was mentioned, although Yanluo's expression did not change, the ruby on her forehead flashed. Therefore Wang Lu immediately followed this topic. She should be quite popular in the immortal world, right? Yanluo moved her lips slightly, but she did not answer. This shouldn't be a secret, right? Don't use the excuse that everything about the royal family is a secret to perfunctory me. Otherwise, I will immediately stop the plan of peaceful coexistence and go all out to break through this passage. Although there is a great probability that it will accelerate the destruction of the passage, but perhaps there is a 1 in 10,000 chance that I can successfully return to 9 regions? Don't forget, traveling between worlds is my forte. When Yen Luo heard this, the gem on her forehead flashed twice again. Alright, since you insist. The little princess is indeed very likable in the world of immortals. She's smart, powerful, and gentle. Everyone I know likes her very much. Wang Lu smiled and said, I'm afraid that's not true. She is indeed smart and gentle, but she is very dangerous. Because she can hide the sharp blade with a gentle disguise. This time, several people from your immortal world came to 9 regions one after another, and only she posed the strongest threat. She actually instigated 2 of our loyal generals to rebel, and she almost instigated more people to rebel. This is really a remarkable achievement. Yen Luo was silent for a moment and then said, although the little princess is easy to talk to, we do respect and love her, but we also fear her. She is the most proud bloodline of His Majesty the Immortal King. This time, when we come to the lower realm with her, you actually have no chance. Wang Lu said, oh? You have so much confidence in her? Unfortunately, she's dead. Yen Luo trembled visibly and said, impossible. Do you need me to replay her tragic death to you with a projection technique? To be honest, I don't want to do that. Although the little princess is a beauty, her tragic death is not very good. That's impossible. How could you, a group of people from the lower realm, hurt the little princess? Wang Lu said with a smile, that's not a good question. The skill that can kill the bloodline of the Immortal King is, of course, the highest secret in 9 regions. How could it be so simple to tell you? Look, now we finally have a topic of common interest, secret. You have the secret that I want, and I also have the secret that you want. So, why don't we be more open and honest? Yen Luo was silent for a long time and then nodded. Wang Lu said, let me ask a question first. The opening of this passage should be quite difficult for the immortal world. But you did not hesitate to destroy the passage. There should be a reason for this. For example, you guessed that I was sent here by Xia Xiaohe, and all of this was her plan? At the same time, the immortal world has the means to open a second passage? Yen Luo said, yes, I did think that the little princess sent you here, and the immortal world does have the ability to open a second passage. However, only one passage can be opened at a time, and the price is not cheap. My question is, who exactly are you? Wang Lu said with a smile, it seems that Xia Xiaohe didn't tell you. Well, I'll be frank. I'm a native of 9 regions. Of course, I'm a bit different from those mediocre people. I've seen a lot of big scenes outside. Yen Luo nodded thoughtfully. Next, it's my turn to ask. Tell me about the Immortal King Xia Yu. His Majesty the Immortal King is our most respected leader. Yen Luo replied dryly, his will is our highest mission. Wang Lu smiled and said, all right, I think I understand. He is the unquestionable king of the immortal world, but his reputation doesn't seem to be very good. It is said that he is an inhuman tyrant? If that's the case, do you want to consider joining us and overthrow the brutal rule of the immortal king together? Yen Luo's expression immediately became cold. If you continue to talk, I don't think there's any need for peaceful coexistence. I understand. For me to say so much, your attitude is actually quite obvious. Then let's change the topic about Paksu. Next, Wang Lu and Yen Luo asked and answered questions for a long time. During this period, the topic was not only limited to the secrets of the immortal world. Occasionally, Wang Lu would also talk about the customs of 9 regions to test the other party's reaction. Sometimes Yen Luo would ignore it, and sometimes she would pretend to be interested. Of course, most of the time she was also trying to find out the secrets of 9 regions. Wang Lu answered honestly one by one. As for Wang Wu, halfway through the question and answer session, she went to sleep out of boredom. When she woke up, she saw that the two were still talking and laughing. You two don't really want to have a great friendship, do you? Hearing Wang Wu's complaint, Wang Lu finally stopped the question and answer session, sorted out his thoughts, and then said, I'm glad you're willing to spend so much time chatting with me. Yen Luo smiled. Then it's time for us to leave. Yen Luo's smile quickly cooled down. Wang Lu turned his head and said, didn't you tell me when we were chatting just now? This passage can't trap me. I can leave at any time if I want to, so thank you for telling me so many things. Of course, in return, I also told you a lot of things. It just depends on whether you have the ability to return to the immortal world with those secrets. By the way, your ignorance also let me confirm one important thing. Yen Luo looked at Wang Lu quietly. Xiaoyu really doesn't have long to live. Wang Lu said, he has clearly possessed his daughter, Xia Xiaohe, but he knows nothing about Xia Xiaohe's experience in 9 regions. Didn't he tell you that I have the gate of all realms in my hand? The gate of all realms? Yanlua's face changed slightly. As an immortal, she certainly knew what the gate of all realms meant. Even if it was only a fragment, as long as she could use its power a little, it would not be difficult to return to 9 regions from the endless void. If she knew in advance that Wang Lu had the gate of all realms in his hand, of course, she would not be stupid enough to cut off the passage. So, the possession of Xia Xiaohe may be true, but the limitation of the immortal king's possession is also very obvious. Except for the last moment, the consciousness of the immortal king has not been awakened, so he doesn't even know that I have the gate of all realms. Otherwise, there is no reason for him not to tell you. And this phenomenon, I'm afraid, is because his primordial spirit has decayed? We often say that when a person's life is coming to an end, in addition to the decay of the body, it is also the decay of the primordial spirit or the soul. The immortal king plundered his own blood to prolong the life of the body, but he was unwilling to integrate the consciousness of the later generations so as to dilute himself. Thus, he could only use this method of possession and hibernation to prolong his existence in vain. This is really ugly. When it came to this, Wang Lu ignored that the ruby on Yanlua's forehead had begun to shine with a dangerous light and continued to say, an old immortal king and an immortal world in peril. In the face of such an opponent, I believe the morale of 9 regions should be unprecedentedly high. Thank you for your cooperation so that I can confirm this good news. Then goodbye. With that, Wang Lu spread out his right hand, and the light in the palm of his hand slowly twisted. The next moment, Yanlua's figure suddenly became ethereal, and a long and vicissitude aura instantly enveloped the whole passage. Wang Lu fiercely clenched his right hand, and that unformed black hole was immediately annihilated. However, a 2 meters long iron spear appeared in his hand. The muzzle of the spear had already gathered a soul-stirring and powerful energy, as if a new sun was shining. At the same time, the woman in white, who was still lazy just now, had already stood in front of Wang Lu on the right side. Her emerald-green bamboo sword was pointed diagonally down and lit up a golden shield in front of Wang Lu. Yanlua's sudden change seemed a bit passive at this time. There was a trace of disbelief on her face, but her hands still did not stop moving. A thick ancient sword was suspended in front of her. One side of the sword was engraved with stars, sun and moon, and the other side was engraved with mountains, rivers and plants. It was the most precious treasure of the immortal world, Shenyuan sword. Xiaoyu, I've been waiting for you for a long time. That you're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.